Hey everyone, welcome to GameFace episode 91, the E3 hangover episode, and there's no hangover worse than an E3 hangover, but I think we scraped together a pretty good show for you guys today. The first gameplay came out for Beyond Good and Evil 2 this week. We're going to talk about it.
And we're going to talk about Housemarque's new twin-stick shooter, Nex Machina.
And E3 is a huge show. I think we ended up curating over 900 pieces of content to the site. Inevitably, you're going to miss some big games, and Matt and I are going to pick two that you guys should keep your eye on. Let's go. So here we are, Matt, after the big come down.
Because the schedule dictates it.
Yeah. I will say, it was tough putting together a show this week.
It's been, this week has basically just been exhaust of E3.
It has, basically. Yeah. I looked at other podcasts and video casts, and they were struggling too, so we're not alone in our struggle for this week. Now that you've had a week to kind of settle in, what are your overall impressions of the show? We never, ever announced who we thought the winners of E3 were overall, so maybe we'll do that here right off the top of the show.
Man. I mean, probably Ubi, just because I think they showed the most interesting stuff, although a bunch of the stuff
we picked best press
see.
Conference, basically. Ubisoft got the highest grades for both of us.
And, like Sony did, I mean, it's like...
How about of the three platform holders?
Three platform holders,
It's tough.
I mean, like, I'd probably give it to Sony just because they have the strongest lineup overall in terms of multiple things, but, like, public sentiment seems to dictate Nintendo.
And then you got the new hardware with Xbox.
Yeah, even though I wasn't too impressed by the Nintendo presentation outside of Metroid 3DS.
Yeah.
Because they showed I know they say that Metroid and Pokemon are next year, but I'll believe that when I have Xenoblade 2 in my hands this year.
Right.
I don't know, just like all three of the majors just kind of felt like, well, just wait. Just hang on.
Well, actually, Sony this year was not so much in the you're going to have to wait phase. Somewhat. It actually just showed all games that are coming out in a reasonable time frame.
Within a year, but I just feel like, once you go past the end of 2017 boundary, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
And the stuff I really want to play from Sony is all 2018.
Yeah.
I was kind of hoping we'd get at least one of the things I'm really excited about this year, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's tough. Man, I honestly teeter between Sony and Nintendo, because Nintendo did debut a lot of new games.
Yeah,
whether you care about Kirby and whether you care about Yoshi or not,
although again, that's next year. It's like that's the problem. Is like Sony doesn't really excite me too much this fall, but like their early 2018 looks like it's going to be amazing again. Whereas Nintendo looks like 2018 might be something of a desert, but their end of 2017 is like better than anybody else's right now. Just basically on the back of the Metroid game and Mario.
It's hard to give Microsoft much love when you're talking about this because
their launch game is Crackdown. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, I know Forza is going to be there already, but it's like the game they're launching with the system is Crackdown 3, and it just feels like...
Well, most of the impressive games it showed in its press conference are third-party games that are coming to other platforms. I mean, there really weren't any truly intriguing exclusives there. So, man, I mean, I would probably give it to Sony because if I just look at that lineup that Sony showed, it includes a lot more games that I'm excited to play. I'm not a big Yoshi fan. I'm not a big Kirby fan. Mario looks great. But to me, essentially, it was another one-game E3 for Nintendo. And look, Super Mario Odyssey will probably end up being a Game of the Year contender. If I had to put my money on it, I would say it probably will be. And so you're looking at...
I'd say it's going to be whether it deserves it or not.
Right, yeah. But you're looking at two games from Nintendo in 1 year that are Game of the Year worthy, which we never really get from Nintendo. It typically stretches out its big releases.
Yeah, it is nice to see them kind of acknowledging that they need to stack the deck a little better these days. Like, any previous Nintendo and any previous system would never have released those two games in the same year. Although they are being released in separate fiscal years. Right. So that kind of counts.
Yeah, I guess they're fudging it a little bit there because it's all about fiscal quarters for a company. So overall, what kind of a letter grade would you give E3 2017, Matt?
Like in terms of like if I was watching it in terms of content, I think I'd probably give it like a B-.
Yeah.
Being there would probably drop it to a C. because it was a very difficult show to be there physically present for.
Yeah, and I think it's going to get worse next year, by the way.
I think so. But just in terms of like what was shown and what we kind of learned and what we can look forward to, I think B-. It was a dip year. It was a lull year. You have those in the middle of generations periodically where everybody's got to kind of clear the board of what they've already announced.
No, this is the year where it happens.
Yeah.
This is when it happens. This is when all these games have been announced to get people excited, and now it's just a matter of waiting for them to come out. I would actually give it a little bit of a higher score. I'd probably give it like a B+ overall, because I feel like, one, there was a lot of games on the show floor to play. Mm-hmm. A lot of the big games that are a part of the show, they're at a stage now where they are playable for the general public, and the publishers are okay with it. So I feel like as far as what you're able to play on the show floor, it was a great selection this year across all genres. And I feel like developers are starting to hit their stride with the hardware now. They pretty much settled in with the optimal performance they can get out of these machines. And I think we're starting to see it in the consistent quality of the games across the board. So I give it a B+, because I feel like this is the one year where it was all about the games you are going to be playing, and hey, you can play them now, versus here's all these pie-in-the-sky announcements. God knows when we're going to see these games, a la Final Fantasy VII Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3, that type of stuff. I feel like it was really bereft of that type of thing.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I do like pie-in-the-sky announcements now and then.
Yeah, it gets you excited. I mean, Metroid Prime 4 was one of those.
That. Although, again, like, Metroid Prime 4 did not blow me out of the water because, maybe because you kept saying you thinking it's coming forever, but, like, it's just like, when I see, like, it's like, oh, we're doing Kingdom Hearts 3 or we're doing Shenmue 3 Kickstarter, it's up now, like, it feels like, oh, wow, like, this thing we never thought might happen is finally happening, whereas Metroid Prime 4, it's like, I know you're bringing Metroid back at some point, get on with it. It's like,
but did you?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are really starting to wonder if Nintendo had just kind of bailed on the IP.
Nintendo never bails on an IP forever.
Well,
I mean, it's been 10 damn years.
Fan-wise, I mean, Nintendo was getting slagged for the last several years for how it had been treating Metroid, and then this year it really answered. You're right, but then this year it really answers that call with a Metroid True remake for 3DS and Metroid Prime 4. So, yeah, I would give it to Sony. I give the overall show a B+. I'm all about being able to play stuff, and I'm sure the 15,000 fans that got into E3 this year were appreciative to be actually be able to play stuff that they're excited for, and some new stuff too.
And it sounds like if you go next year, don't skip Thursday.
Yeah.
A lot of people seem like
please skip Thursday.
Or please skip Thursday, yeah. But like,
I got everything done on Thursday. It's like I played everything I wanted on that day. Like, no problem.
Yeah, but it wasn't nearly as bad. Like, the first day was nightmarish.
No, I mean, the first
day was
2
San Diego
days,
Comic-Con level.
It was.
And I thought it would still be crowded on Thursday, but
it still was.
It was more crowded than the last 2 years, for sure. But it wasn't, like, impossible to manage the way the previous 2 days were. And I thought that was interesting because it was like, sure, like executives and people go home after Wednesday, but I thought the public would still be filling the hall, and they just weren't.
Well, oddly enough, we put up our E3 show floor walkthrough that we do every year, and a lot of the people were commenting, they're like, when did you shoot this? Was this shot on Thursday? Because that still looks insane to me. So they had no idea.
You didn't see Tuesday.
Yeah,
ooh, boy.
It was really crazy. So I think part of it, too, didn't they sell tickets, like daily tickets for fans? Like you had to pay by day? Or did you pay one amount and get in for the whole show?
I thought it was one for the whole show, but I don't remember. I didn't look at that page very
because I'm wondering if it was daily, if a lot of people just went the first day, saw what they wanted to see, said, damn, I just spent a lot of money, and like never went back.
I mean, that's probably what I would have done.
Yeah.
It's like, there's not really that much to see and do.
Here's a pro tip, though. If they do offer daily passes next year, get your daily pass for Thursday.
Yeah.
Because you get to see so much more. Yeah. And I know people get excited. They want to be the first to see stuff. But
be there before
really,
Nintendo runs out of hats or
whatever.
But
like, they had hats on Thursday.
Yeah, Nintendo doesn't really run out. That used to be a problem in the old days, but when people weren't really aware of how fast the thing was growing. Now you rarely see anybody run out of swag anymore.
Yeah.
If they are in 5 companies that are giving anything away.
Yeah.
The other place, I didn't actually get up to CD Projekt Red. Usually they have a good
I didn't even know that they had anything there.
Oh, they're always up there, up in.
Oh, you mean in the meeting rooms?
The meeting rooms.
Yeah. Up the escalators.
I figured they were there doing Gwent, but I just never got up there.
Yeah. Well, they didn't show Cyberpunk, which is what everyone cares about. Yeah. So now the whole game's been leaked. Nothing ever came out of that, by the way. Never heard any more news about that blackmail. So.
Biding their time.
Or maybe they paid.
That could be too.
So that's E3 2017. Hope you guys liked our coverage on Sifted. I worked like a maniac. I can promise you that. I finally feel like I'm a human being again. It took a while, though, man. It took me like 4 days to kind of get back up to speed after the show. But hope you guys were all happy with the coverage. Hope you guys were ultimately happy with the games that were shown and the show itself. So let's get on with the show proper. So one of the bigger games we talked about from E3 2017 was Beyond Good and Evil 2, a game that we've been waiting 15 years for. Michelle Ansell's been waiting 15 years to get the game out there, at least show it to people publicly. There's been some leaks and things like that have come out from it.
I think you skipped something.
Oh, I did. In fact, I skipped the thing I want to talk about the most. So it's been a slow week of game releases. Get Even came out from Bandai Namco, which is a first-person shooter that was shrouded in mystery. They never really showed it. We figured out why they didn't show it because it's been getting terrible reviews. But there's one other little game that came out this week that I absolutely adore. It is called Nex Machina. It is the next game from Housemarque. Actually, it isn't the next game from Housemarque after Resogun, but it is sort of the spiritual successor to Resogun. It's kind of like Resogun and Robotron mixed together.
Yeah, well, I would say Resogun is very reminiscent of Defender.
Right.
While Nex Machina is Robotron.
But there are elements from Resogun in Nex Machina.
Yeah, but those elements are in all of Housemarque's games.
Right.
Like that's just
kind
sort
of its signature trademark. It's saving the humans.
Twin stick shooter where you save humans and blow up voxels.
Yeah.
Like, that's basically what this is. Also, the bad guys use purple.
Yeah.
There's a lot of purple. Purple is bad in Housemarque world.
And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering why I'm so excited about this game, because really at this point, twin stick shooters are like a dime a dozen. Like, it seems like 1/3 of every indie studio is creating a twin stick shooter, but this one, there's something special about it.
Yeah, this one's really got something going on. Part of it might be that they brought in Eugene Jarvis, who created Defender and Robotron, to work on it, and that guy still pretty much got it. But it's also just... It's really fast, it's really hard, it looks really nice, and like there's just... I think the word I'd use for it is satisfying.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's everything you do from moment to moment and also on a macro level is just really satisfying.
And what I love about it is how it's broken up into these little tiny chunks. So if you guys watch this gameplay, so basically each area is just like the size of a city block. And you have to basically clear all the enemies out of that. What do they call them? Are they chapters? Are they stages?
Stages or zones or something
Yeah.
like that.
So you have to clear all the enemies out of that stage or zone and try to rescue as many humans as you can while you're doing that. And once you do that, you get what you just saw right there. You kind of teleport on to the next one. And if you die on any stage, you don't go all the way back to the beginning. You restart that stage. And the way the difficulties are split up, it's not really... They don't really change how hard the game is or how many enemies are spawned or per stage. It's all gated by how many continues you have, essentially.
And speed.
And speed,
The enemies move much, much faster as you move up in difficulty.
Yep, so like the easy difficulty is unlimited continues. It's kind of like you're playing an arcade game.
Yeah.
And the middle difficulty, you get 99 continues or 100 continues.
I think it's 99, yeah.
99. And then in the hardest difficulty, you just get 10 continues.
10, and then there's another one you unlock after that, and I think you get 3.
Oh, God.
Now, I finished easy with 1 continue.
Wow, really?
Because it was
That's
not
amazing.
It's not I'm pretty good at these games. It's not easy. I used to love Robotron.
Yeah.
And Smash.
So did I, yeah.
It is not easy, even on easy. Because like part of it is because I kept getting extra lives and stuff, but like it's intense. Like it does not stop.
You get it. What I love about this game is you get in a zone.
Yeah.
Like my wife was watching me play this and she was blown away. She was like, "Oh my God, how are you dodging that stuff?" And you just get into this zone in this game where you just learn it's like this sixth sense that you have, where you can just learn to time the attacks and manage the mobs and I am having a blast playing this game.
I also really like that it does a good job, like in an old school way of teaching you how everything works without popping text up on the screen. Like,
yeah, I mean that was maybe one criticism I do have is that you kind of learn a lot of the intricacies of the game on the fly and by failing. And you're right, most of it is done really well. But sometimes, like I cannot believe you did not die, dude. That's insane because they throw stuff at you that basically is just like instant kill.
I wouldn't go that far. I mean,
until you learn like what you need to do, like they'll introduce like a new enemy type or like a new laser type or whatever, and it's like it just kills you instantly, and it becomes this process of like, figuring out what you need to do for the next like 5 or 6 tries to get around that new type.
But basically the dash.
It saves your ass
because the dash makes you invincible. You can dash through anything.
Right.
So as long as you're ready with that, and early on I did die a few times because I kept wanting to be on the other trigger.
Yeah.
And you can get a triple dash power up that lets you kind of like dart around really well.
And you get a dash, exploding dash, where you dash and it just blows up everything around you.
But it's just like and some of the special weapons are more useful than others. So you learn that, and
just to go over the controls. It's a twin stick shooter, so you move with the left stick, shoot with the right stick with your normal blaster, which you can get a spread for that. You can get a higher fire rate for that, and then there's just 2 buttons. There's the dash button on the left shoulder. And then there's the special weapon button on the right shoulder. And there's, 5 or 6 special weapons?
At least. It's like Power Shot is the one right there. That's the one I use the most. Rocket Launcher is also very good. There's a sword. There's a smart bomb thing. There's... I
think that's...
It's pretty close.
Yeah, I think there's 5 or 6, yeah. And each one is valid and has its strengths and weaknesses. The only one I don't really find much value in is the sword.
Yeah, the sword isn't used. My 2 go-tos are the Power Shot and the Rocket Launcher.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, the Rocket Launcher is really effective. And once you get through, I don't know, what is it, probably like 10 or 15 stages, you get to a boss fight. The boss fights, this is the first one that you actually tackle, are pretty inventive and fun. It's pretty. It really tests your mettle to kind of navigate the bullet hell stuff while you're trying to attack a boss at the same time.
They're also very good at the bosses are good about being. They use what you've learned in that world,
right?
And kind of put it all together into one enemy. The only one that I had, like the first, I don't think I died on any of the bosses till the 4th one, which was.
I died on the 2nd one a ton.
Something Prime.
I started on the middle difficulty though. I never even played the easy one.
It's a robot of some kind, and
the 2nd one's a robot.
Yeah, but they're all robots.
But like, you're right.
But the 4th one is like this boss, something Emirate Prime or something like that, and he just had some patterns that I could not figure out on the first. And luckily, I had like 6 lives, so I just sort of like, I kind of like brute force my way through it. But like, that's a tough fight, even on the easy difficulty.
I played on medium. I haven't even tried easy yet. And the 2nd boss, I literally fought him 20 or 30 times before I beat him.
I didn't try the regular, because like the game actually says like play it on this one first. Like,
oh really?
Yeah. Like, if you look at the descriptions, they're like normal's for if you know how everything works already.
Yeah. But once I got into the groove, I thought normal was perfully balanced. Like
normal's probably about where you would be, because like I said, easy's a little too easy for some if you know how these games work. So it's probably if you're a Robotron or a Smash TV or a Total Carnage veteran, you're probably good starting on normal.
Yep, and as you can see, voxels are a big part of the visuals in this game. Things explode into these very satisfying groups of little pixels. Which is also a Housemarque trademark. I think that it puts voxels in pretty much every game that it makes. This game is freaking awesome. I didn't buy it. They sent it to me. How much is this retail format?
15, I think.
Wow. At $15, I highly recommend.
Or maybe I bought that for maybe it was 15 because of the Steam sale or the launch price. I got it on Steam.
The one
caveat so it's either 15 or 20. I don't remember.
Okay, at either of those prices, I recommend buying this game. The one thing I will say is the lack of online play is really disappointing.
Yeah, 2-player co-op would be fun on this.
Yeah, it would. And of course, you have to rebalance the whole game and do a lot of work. I'm guessing that comes along as DLC at some point, and hopefully free DLC.
Or the sequel.
That would really suck. I mean, this game screams for co-op, in my opinion anyway. But other than that, I really have no complaints. It runs at a crazy frame rate. You never blame the game when you die. I mean, sometimes it's a little hard to see the geometry of the ground that you're capable of moving on.
Yeah, there's a couple, but you learn how that
because sometimes the ground is so covered with enemies and bullets that you cannot see the ground, and sometimes you'll get snagged on something and get caught and die. But even on the medium difficulty, having 99 retries, like I played it for I started over and played it for like 4 hours last night, and my retries were only down to like 80 or something, because you also find extra lives as you play through the game.
Yeah, I think 99 is more than enough to get through normal for your average player.
Yeah, for sure. I am loving this game. This may be my favorite twin stick shooter that I've played since like Geometry Wars.
And this is very much like, to Robotron what Geometry Wars is to like Asteroids.
Yeah.
Or what Resogun was to Defender. These guys are really good at taking like a classic arcade game and making it something that feels like it fits today.
Yep, for sure.
But still has that like old school like classic feel to how it plays.
There's like the voxel porn right there. You blow up the boss. I cannot recommend this game any higher, really. It's been getting 9s and 10s, totally deserves it.
Yeah, I came at it and kind of like it looks cool. All right, I'll try that. And I was like, wow.
I was getting hyped for it.
I mean, I knew it was going to be good because of who made it already, but like it just feels good. It's hard. Watching it doesn't really get it across as much as getting your hands on it.
It just feels great, and it's fun, and it never lets up. And when you finish a level that you've been having trouble with,
the time just goes.
It really does. It whips on by. When you finally beat that boss, that feeling of accomplishment you get's great. I'm really loving it.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling if you pick this up on our recommendation, I don't think any of you are going to come back and hate us for it.
Yeah, as long as you like that kind of gameplay, like this is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, you know what it is. We told you it's really good, and now you should go buy it. So, all right, let's move on. Now we're going to talk about what I tried to promo before. We're going to talk about Beyond Good and Evil 2. The first gameplay demo that was shown at E3 behind closed doors with the press has finally been released to the public. Anybody can watch it. It's curated on Sifted right now if you want to watch the whole thing. But we do have B-roll of all of it that we're going to run during our discussion here, so you'll get to see most of it. Matt, what was your first impression when you finished watching that tech demo?
Like I had a little bit of flashback of like the No Man's Sky thing, where I was like, oh, cool, fly around planets and solar systems. Like the scale of it is really cool. Like it's. I mean, while maybe it's not what I would want a sequel to Beyond Good and Evil necessarily to be, it's certainly a game I want to play.
Yeah,
that would be my first impression. It would be like, wow, I didn't expect this is what Beyond Good and Evil 2 would be, but I'll take it.
My first impression was, this game is a long ways off.
This as well.
Oh my God,
I believe they said that this demo didn't even have graphics until about 2 weeks before E3.
Yeah, I mean, they literally just started on this game.
I mean, when you say tech demo, this is a tech demo.
Yeah.
This is like back when you go into like the Epic booth at GDC in the early 2000s. they'd show you like a render of like a locust head and then claim it wasn't a game.
Right.
You know, like they were working on all the gear. They showed Gears of War stuff for years.
It's like a lot of the
before
stuff
they admitted it was an actual
GDC,
game.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
very
what it reminds
GDC.
me of. This game is not coming out for like 3 years. One, because it's so early, and two, if you listen to what Michel Ancel says during this, it is so ambitious.
Super ambitious, and they still don't seem to quite know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, the game's not there yet.
No,
like, the ideas are there, and they've got some tech stuff working, and you can fly around as a monkey in a jetpack, which is always a good thing to be able to say.
Yeah.
But anything can be improved by a monkey in a jetpack, really.
That's true.
It's really the one thing Nex Machina is missing.
Yeah.
But, like, clearly, like, there's nothing to do in here yet. It's just like, here's what you'll be doing in a really basic kind of moment-to-moment gameplay level, probably, if we get it to work. Like,
I'm really shocked that they showed it in this state. I almost feel like the only reason they did was that they could maybe be considered for Best of E3 awards, because that's like the caveat with the journalists. Like, it has to be playable. You have to be able to hand the controller to me, and I have to be able to manipulate the game myself.
Yeah,
and this satisfies those conditions.
See, I have a different take on
perspective
that.
of playable.
No, well, also I have a different take on why they did. I think they're blowing out everything they have on this game because they think they might never get to show it again.
That could be.
Like, I think I feel a lot of like wariness of the Vivendi takeover like looming in showing these things. Just because, like, if I'm Michel Ancel and I've been like working on this off and on for 15 years, yeah, I'm gonna want to like basically be like, hey, we tried. That's basically what you're saying here is like, it's not just teasing you and saying like, hey, this thing you want to play is finally coming out, maybe someday, eventually. It's also saying like, hey, we were working on it. Like, if we all go away in a few months,
it was legit.
We were trying to give you this.
It wasn't a big charade,
right?
But this game, I mean, if it comes out at all, it's coming out like end of the generation. Like,
oh yeah, this is like, if we see this in 2020, it will be a very smooth development cycle.
I will say, though, the things that he says about the game, what their design goals are for it, it sounds incredible.
Oh, yeah.
If they ever...
Almost the literal definition of incredible, which is unbelievable.
Unbelievable, yeah. I mean, it's like a GTA that takes place across, like, galaxies.
Yeah, and like, you always got to remember that when GTA 3 was first described in magazine articles, that sounded unbelievable, too.
Yeah.
And there it was. It was right, you know. So, you know, if anyone can pull it off, it's him. And I do love this part where he lands on the statue and then pulls
and
way
shows
out.
The scale. Yeah.
This is like this scale is very important. I'm a big fan of scale and scope in these modern games where the engines allow you to do this kind of thing. And like I find this really impressive what he does.
Well, there's also that massive city down below
the city's
that's
great
being
too,
rendered while this is happening.
The question just becomes like, you know, sort of similar to the No Man's Sky question. Can you fill this world with enough for me to do and be interested in to make it worthwhile?
Yeah,
like, I love looking at that, but now I got to play a game.
Yeah, I mean, but if you look at a game like No Man's Sky and
where they didn't succeed in doing that.
Right, because it was just basically empty planets with very little to do or see. And then you look at a game like this where it has this up in the sky and then this massive metropolis down below. I mean, that's a good start. If this is one world out of 10 or 15
and
or
also
whatever.
There's more stuff back, you know, more structures.
Yeah, way back. I mean, look at that. It's impressive, but it's just a tech demo right now. So, were you pleasantly surprised by this, or was this what you expected it to be?
It's not what I expected it to be at all, but anything that involves like massive scale space travel, especially in the context of, you know, this kind of that French surrealist sort of comic meshing of manga and kind of, you know, Verne era science fiction that seems to be only from France. Like, I don't know, it's just, you know, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets is like that too. I love that aesthetic, and the idea that you'd make, you know, and one of the coolest things about that aesthetic is these weird worlds and these strange places that you never would have, you know, imagined yourself or thought to even, you know, consider. And if they're going to deliver a bunch of planets like that in this game, like, awesome, like, you know, I'm in immediately.
Think we'll ever see it?
No.
I don't think so. So you're pretty convinced that Vivendi is going to take over Ubisoft?
I give it pretty good odds at this point. Like, I you know, I'm no business genius, but all the signs are there, and you know, while I'd like to think that this strong showing they had at E3 might be able to convince their shareholders like not to do that, shareholders don't really care about that. They just want to know what's going to make them the most money, and in the short term, the Vivendi takeover will probably make a lot of them a lot of money, and that's simply going to be what's on their mind, not whether this game that may or may not come out in 3 to 4 years is going to be a lot of fun for me to play.
Yeah, because stockholders, it's like you said, they don't really care about games.
No, they don't care about what the company makes.
Most of them are not gamers.
They don't care about what the company makes. They care about what the company makes.
Right.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, it's and so, yeah, just because I'm investing in a particular company does not mean I am invested in what they're doing or what they're putting out. I just want them to make me money.
Yeah.
And if Vivendi coming in and ruining everything is going to make more money in the short term, what do I care as a stockholder?
And I mean, the irony is the excellent showing that Ubisoft had is just going to increase
Vivendi still
profit
goes for it,
that stockholders will make, because people are going to say, oh, they have all these great... And a lot of stock investors don't really get the industry. They don't realize, yeah, that's great, but what happens when Michel Ancel leaves?
Right.
Because you bought the company he's worked for pretty much his entire career.
Well, at that point, they've already sold off what they had and made their money, and they're on to the next thing.
Right.
That's how it works. I mean, and it sucks because it leaves wreckage behind, and in this case, it's going to leave wrecked art behind.
I mean, think about how many studios Ubisoft has now. Yeah. I mean, they have studios pretty much on every continent at this point, and in some continents, multiple studios.
They employ thousands of people.
Tens of thousands.
And if this goes through, it's going to be bad news for a horrifying percentage of the industry.
Yeah, it will
a lot of people are going to be looking for work after this, probably.
And they'll find it.
They will find it, I think.
They're very talented. So.
But it's a shame because there's a lot of good ideas in Ubisoft. And Ubisoft, for all the heat they take, I think they do care about what they make. I think a company that didn't care would have just kept pumping out Assassin's Creeds without kind of going back to the drawing board like they've done with the Origins.
It's a publisher with sort of a family touch to it. It doesn't feel corporate at all. Even though it probably is.
Sometimes, yeah, it is, and of course, sometimes the games feel a little corporate.
Yeah, for sure.
Once they find something, I mean, somebody in UB France really loves the whole climbing towers to open the map thing because that is just
that's what they do.
I'm wondering what you're going to climb in Far Cry 5 at this point. Trees, bell towers, like what do you got?
No, it is. They're like they're like almost like sniper towers.
Yeah. Like crow's nests.
They already showed some footage of that where a whole demo where they're just sniping from a crow's nest. So, but I don't know if it actually opens up like.
I don't know. It doesn't open up the world in Assassin's Creed anymore, or at least doesn't reveal a map. I guess it reveals like points of interest, but you still have to go to them to find out what they are.
Yep. So, man, I hope we end up seeing it. I'm a little more positive that we might actually see this game.
Well, like even if Vivendi doesn't do that, like there's still a good chance we never see this game.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. Like I think it's 50-50 whether this game ever comes out, and you're probably a little lower than that. I'm guessing.
Definitely, but I'd rather believe you.
It's better than 0.
Oh yeah.
Because what they've shown is pretty auspicious. Like it literally is pointing to something that could be really incredible and could actually change open world games forever. But man, that's a lot of work still left to go on that.
And then of course,
who knows where
you wonder about the meeting for this, where it's like, all right, so where's the games as platform angle?
Right.
You're like, and like you kind of had like a little thing of that in the presentation where they're like, oh, it'll be multiplayer if you want it to be, kind of thing, and like it's just like, man, I sure wish this was a single player fucking open.
Yeah, I mean, look, Rockstar found a way to do it with Grand Theft Auto. It's making money hand over fist on GTA Online. So
true. I mean, there is a way to separate those two things in this game. There is a way to.
There's also a big difference.
Just like GTA 5 did, like use the same assets to create basically two separate games.
Yeah.
One to get you in the first place, and the other to keep you playing for a couple of years.
It's going to need ground-based vehicles, though.
And it's also going to need gameplay. I mean, like you're going to need. I mean,
which we've seen.
Yeah, it looks, but like
they've shown gameplay from Beyond Good and Evil 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm shocked that. I mean, it appears that they've just completely scrapped everything.
Yeah, I don't think that game we saw where Jade's running around rooftops and stuff. I don't think that game doesn't seem like it exists anymore.
No, I mean, because it was Jade for one.
Unless, I mean, we don't know how far this starts in the past.
Right.
We don't know how far that goes.
It would be a little weird for an open world game to jump time period so drastically.
Assassin's Creed does that all the time.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
Assassin's Creed covers 50, 60 years sometimes.
Yeah, but they do it kind of in a different way.
They do little jumps, but like you see that the cities change and the cities you're in different areas sometimes.
Yeah,
like, it can be done. Also,
it's a challenge.
But you look at this demo; they are not afraid of challenge.
No.
So
I wish them luck. I hope we end up seeing it because I think it could be something really special.
Not seeing it would almost be worse knowing about it.
Yeah.
If it never comes out, I'd almost never have wanted to know it existed at all.
Yeah, because between the trailer that we're seeing now, which I'm completely enraptured by, and again, I'm really shocked at some of the negative response to the change in tone. Some people are angry that it's like M-rated and gritty, whereas the other games weren't. I think the other game was teen rated.
I feel like it was T.
But it was pretty benign.
Yeah,
the first game.
But it also didn't deal in the Jade didn't run in the circles that these guys do.
Right.
So I'm sure, even though Beyond Good and Evil 1 was rated T, I'm sure somewhere in that world somebody was saying fuck.
Yeah.
It's gonna
They just weren't on camera.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Hopefully this isn't the last time we talk about it. It's going to go way underground here for maybe next E3. We see provided what happens with Vivendi, but I mean, this really might be the last look we get at this game for maybe ever, sadly. So we wanted to talk about it and get it on your radar in case you guys missed it. I know a lot of people after E3, they take a break from games. We can see it in our traffic this week. Our traffic was pretty low, particularly compared to E3, which was our busiest traffic week of the year so far. So a lot of people, they're like, okay, I get it. After E3, they don't think there's much that they're going to see after that. But as it turns out, there is, and we're going to show a lot of that in this week's episode to kind of get you guys up to speed. So, all right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about a game that shockingly was not debuted at E3, and then the week after E3, we get the first real trailer of it, Dynasty Warriors 9. They showed the first gameplay from the game. All we had known about it before, they had put out like a teaser trailer that just was like cinematic shots or whatever. And all that we had really been released information-wise that it was going to be an open-world game. And this week, we finally got the first look at gameplay from Dynasty Warriors 9. Matt, what do you think now that you've seen it?
Well, it sure looks like Dynasty Warriors.
It looks exactly the same.
I only have it in me to play about like one of these a year, maybe.
I have like one per
and,
generation.
Fire Emblem Warriors kind of has that dance slot filled already.
And you know what? The IP appeals to me more.
Yeah.
And that's if I had to choose between this and Fire Emblem Warriors, I'm going to play Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah, like I certainly have no problem with the Romance of the Three Kingdoms or the Warring States thing, whatever. I don't remember which one it is. But I played the Yellow Turban Rebellion many times.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I really need to do it again.
Yeah. Look, this franchise
I'm sorry,
has its
Cal
fans.
P.
Yeah. It just feels like this game has just been left in the dust, this franchise at this point.
Yeah,
it just doesn't feel relevant anymore. Most games of this type have kind of at least transitioned over into the action-adventure genre. Well, the action RPG genre.
Well, the other thing
where there's like
really
RPG
weird,
elements built into them, and you're building up your characters. This just looks like
that.
It does.
Dynasty Warriors has had that for a long time, leveling each character up, leveling their weapons up, finding the weapons in the area. Like it just doesn't really change anything.
Right.
Note,
I'm talking about like the crafting part of it and some of the more traditional RPG elements that have been creeping into games like this. This one is just, it feels like it's just been stuck in the same place for like 10 years now.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of the early action games to really adopt like kind of the action RPG ideas, and each character had their own inventory, and you'd get a good weapon or a bad weapon or this weapon and forge them into this or do that. And like, it was just too much. It was like there's 60 characters, you got to pick one or two and go through it.
Yeah.
The other weird thing is like they seem to be putting a lot more effort into the licensed stuff at this point. Like,
yeah.
Like certainly, I picked up Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires like cheap on PSN a while ago, and like it's amazing how much worse it feels compared to Hyrule Warriors. Like Hyrule Warriors is probably the best playing Dynasty Warriors game ever made.
Team Ninja, right?
Team Ninja worked on it, but it's, it's still the same franchise technically.
But I mean, look, it's either Team Ninja or Omega Force who makes these games. Omega Force is making Dynasty Warriors 9. Team Ninja is making...
Team Ninja, hell, but Omega Force is still credited on Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in the, but like Hyrule Warriors just feels way better than any of the equivalent Dynasty Warriors games of the same generation. And you got to wonder, like, what's, probably, I mean, might be the influence of Team Ninja, but it's not like Team Ninja is like an instant win.
Right. Not anymore.
But and I assume Fire Emblem Warriors will have. I mean, part of me assumes it's just like maybe they made what they usually make, and Nintendo kept sending it back, saying like, no, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right.
This, yeah.
So Nintendo probably has higher standards than Koei. Koei Vanilla has for these things. But even like you look at like the Berserk game and stuff, like there's some quality work happening there that just doesn't seem to be reflected in the recent Dynasty Warriors work. Now I guess we'll see what Musou All Stars looks and feels like if they take kind of what was laid down in Hyrule Warriors and apply it to their main series like that. I would definitely like to play that if it plays as well as Hyrule Warriors did, but a kind of part of me is going to really wait for some solid feedback and reviews on that. Whereas like Fire Emblem Warriors, I'll probably buy instantly.
Yeah.
Just because I trust at this point, I trust what they make for Nintendo to be on the quality level of Hyrule Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, too, is it doesn't really appear to be making much use of the new hardware. You still have the same problem where there's like 800 enemies and they're all exactly the same character model. It's just... If taking advantage of the hardware means making it an open world game, that to me is the wrong tact. Because I don't see how an open world really helps this franchise much, if at all.
I feel like it's pretty much that already in kind of a practical way how you play the game. Like, what's the difference?
Does it really matter if the levels load in or if they're just snapped together?
I don't think so.
I mean, I would rather have smaller contained environments and focus more on an enemy variety beyond like 3.
Yeah, and I would rather have a focus on like kind of the strategic elements where it feels like what you're doing matters.
Yeah.
And like Empires gets that a little bit, but it also sort of bogs down in more menu-driven shit. Whereas I would be more interested in a dynamic battlefield feeling, and like you can see they're trying for it, but like every time I play an Empires game, I like hope that they're going to give me what I've been wanting since they started doing the Empires spin-offs, and they just never quite get there.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe Dynasty Warriors 8 Empires would have been what I wanted when Dynasty Warriors 6 Empires was made, but the rest of the industry keeps leapfrogging it, essentially.
Yeah.
And I certainly don't expect this one to change that trend. They're just kind of catching up to what happened 6 years ago, like they always are.
This franchise has essentially been bulletproof. It has a certain cadre of fans that tend to buy it every time. Do you think this might be the breaking point, though, for it, where...
I don't know.
I think people have been prophesizing the doom of this franchise for a decade. But
there have been some, times when we've been mean to this series and got a little.
I'm not a fan. I mean, full disclosure,
back in the day and stuff. And it was a couple times we had it implied that like this thing is Yakuza backed,
right?
And like don't mess with Koei if you like know what's good for you, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and like
I think that's more than rumors, actually.
Yeah, but it's like the rumor goes that basically one of the reasons this series sells so well is that all the stores have to order their allotment or else they get in trouble, basically.
Well, that is what happened legitimately back when it first launched, because the Yakuza also had a monopoly tied into Koei at that point, where they had some kind of a patent where everyone had to get their PlayStation 1 CD-ROMs burned through them.
Right.
And they used that leverage to basically push this franchise into the stores and get great placement. And plus, it's Yakuza. I mean, if they know you're Yakuza, you can go into a store and be like, yo, you're putting this game right behind the register, and you're going to buy X amount of copies. And they're going to do it. So
it worked.
And it worked, because, I mean...
It did become a legit... Because it's easy to play, and it is fun on a really kind of brainless, like, past the time level.
Ultimately, the game has to hold up, though. You can shove a game in front of everyone's face, and that helps, but if the game sucks, it's not going to sustain over time, and the game was good enough, and particularly in Japan, they love it, to sustain it all this time. So, and again, you have all those spin-offs you're talking about, the Empire's games, that's just like scratching the surface of how many times they've reused this game design. I mean, it is probably one of the most pimped out,
and the same maps and the same
engines
everything.
Ever.
It's just the same thing.
So there was Samurai Warriors, and then all the third-party stuff they're working on with
then
Nintendo,
the Orochi thing, where like they crossed over Samurai Warriors and Dynasty Warriors.
Exactly. And then you have like IP-driven stuff, like the Berserk game that just came out that you talked about. So, yeah,
I mean, it's a formula that works clearly, but I don't know, like. You'd think it would only go so far, but at this point, maybe it's almost like it's inertia or some kind of feeling.
It's it's the cockroach of the video game industry.
Yeah, or
you
it's
cannot
like you just
kill it; it won't die.
Like it's like kind of one of those things. Like, oh, I wonder what this looks like. What does Guan Yu look like in this on this system? Everyone's got to have their Dynasty Warriors game just to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
But I feel like getting Dynasty Warriors 8 for like $10 was enough for me.
Yeah.
On that, I'm not gonna. I feel like maybe I'll buy this when it's $8 too.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't show this off at E3, although it was kind of smart, because if it happened during E3, we wouldn't be talking about it on GameFace. So I guess ultimately they were proven right by waiting till the week after the show to debut the first gameplay of it. So I'm sure a lot more is going to be coming from this game in the coming months.
Their Attack on Titan game was really good.
There's another one. And that was pretty much the same engine.
Yeah.
They actually did something different with that game, at least.
They were kind of building on Tokiden, or whatever that was.
Tokiden. There's another one.
Because
that
game uses a lot more flying stuff.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where they took a lot of the Attack on Titan stuff. But again, their licensed stuff is surprisingly good.
It is. Yeah, no doubt. So
it feels like Dynasty Warriors is like just what they make to
fill the coffers for their more creative ideas.
It's like obligation or something.
Yeah. Well, they want to make money, ultimately. Yeah. And that's their cash cow. They know that they're going to sell a ton of them. So I'm sure we'll see a lot more from that game coming up in the next few months, but wanted to get it on your radar now that we've seen how it actually plays, and it plays exactly the same. So there you go. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about a new service that was also rumored before E3 and just finally launched this week. Came out with the launch trailer. The service is now online. Sega Forever. Mm-hmm. It's essentially a mobile service where you can play retro Sega games for free on your mobile phone on iOS and Android. It launched with 5 games. It was Sonic the Hedgehog, Comic Zone,
Crazy Taxi.
I can't remember what the other 2 were.
I don't know.
I'm sure we'll see them in this trailer, nevertheless. But
I was interested in this for a second, and then I kind of zoned out when I found it was only mobile.
Yeah, so basically how it works is you can play games for free, and you have to watch ads while you play the games. Mm-hmm. Or you can buy each game for $2. As it turns out, the games are emulated.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of pushback on the quality of the games for this service.
Yeah, it's weird that Sega has a lot of trouble finding emulated games with the sound working right.
Yeah, why is that?
The Genesis sound chip is a very weird beast, and it's hard to get right. And there are emulators out there that do it right now, but none of them are in the commercially available products. And this has been a problem going back to the Dreamcast, because Sega put out a Sonic Genesis collection thing on that back in the day. And I remember being super excited for it, and I put it in, all the sound was wrong.
Yeah.
And the thing is, like, you forget, like, they kind of tried to downplay it, and when we slammed it in the review, it was back in Tech TV days, but like, the sound to these old games is really key, because it's the only real communication you had with the game.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, but I've heard the Sonic ring sound probably 5 million
times. How many times, I wonder,
life.
have we heard that sound?
And if the pitch is wrong, I'm gonna know it
right away.
And so, like, it's like hearing your favorite song it's played in the wrong key.
It's like slowed down or whatever.
Like, and like, yeah, I know. That the punches in Streets of Rage were wrong. Like, they didn't sound right. And that happens a lot in these kind of cheap and dirty emulator collections that are put out by some, when you see like the retro Sega console for like $20 with 30 games on it at Toys R Us or whatever, like all those console, and they're putting another one out this fall, I think, more styled like the classic Genesis. But I guarantee you the sound's going to be wrong on that one too, because they're using all the same software. I have to give respect to Nintendo, because they never let their virtual console games go up with bad sound like that.
No, but they have also been. It's also been discovered that Nintendo has released emulated versions of its games.
But they at least vet them.
Yeah.
I mean, Sega's upfront about, we licensed it on the Dreamcast one. I think they straight up said we licensed this emulator from this person who makes this. Yeah.
Why not build one yourself that you know is going to work? It's so easy. You have on mobile, the power of these phones is like a billion times more powerful than the Sega Genesis ever was.
Well, because I think at the time, at least, it was basically like their reaction to us asking about it was like, who cares? Like,
it's just so lazy.
They didn't think anyone would notice, basically. And like, it was, that was early days. That was like 2001, or 2001, 2002. And like, I think they didn't really know that, like, the nostalgia for the older games wasn't there yet. Like, I think people like you and I knew that was coming, because we were getting older and we still weren't tired of playing our favorites from back then. But the companies, I don't think, realized how sacred almost some of these things are to the people who grew up with them. And now it's there, and a lot of other companies have finally kind of come around to the idea that you need to emulate or remaster these things with a real eye towards accuracy, and Sega still doesn't quite seem to get that.
Well, the other caveat to this, too, is that Sega, about a month ago, put out this big declaration during one of its financial reports saying how its new goal was to revive all this old IP that it has, that it's just been sitting around and they haven't been using it or working with it. And if this is sort of your first foray to get people kind of reconnected with that retro content, that's bad.
Yeah, not tops.
I mean, it doesn't really... to me, it demonstrates that you're not really all that dedicated to making sure that you're handling this retro catalog with kids' gloves and with care. And so it makes you wonder, I mean, if you look back at some of the games that Sega or IPs that Sega has tried to revive in the past, they're guilty of that again. Mm-hmm. I mean, pretty much anytime they've tried to revive an old IP in the modern world, those games have done terrible. They've scored like 4 and 5. Shinobi might be the one exception. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, like Altered Beast...
Altered Beast was a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, all of them, though. It's like they fail to
realize
what the essence of...
Right. And even a lot of they did the 3D Ages series in Japan, and a lot of those were bad.
Yeah.
The Golden Axe games they did for that, where basically they were 3D versions of classic games for the PlayStation 2. And the Golden Axe ones were, similar to the Ninja Turtles in Time, like Xbox arcade thing. Mm-hmm. It's just, it completely lost what made those games play the way they played and feel the way they felt, and there was nothing there for it. And like, I think the only 3D Ages game I ever got and kept was the Phantasy Star collection.
Yeah.
The Phantasy Star games, I think, are some of the great lost RPGs of the 16-bit era. And it's a shame that, like,
I mean, it's a shame that whole franchise has gone away.
Right. I mean, Phantasy Star 2 is one of the greatest of all time.
Of all time.
If you were there in 1991.
Yeah, you play it now.
And you play it now, and you're like, you got to bust the graph paper out and draw the maps and shit. This is like, I was like, wow, like, how did we have time for this? But look, like, I think it's ridiculous that Sega doesn't go do, Final Fantasy style remakes of these, like not like Final Fantasy 7, but like, the way they remade 4 and 6 and 3.
They don't even have to do that. I mean, create a new game. With the Phantasy Star IP in that universe.
Well, Phantasy Star, Online 2 is going strong in Asia.
But that's what I'm talking about. Like, I think it's crap that all we've got are these sort of MMO takes on that IP. Like, how about a really good single-player Phantasy Star RPG? Like, that's one of those things that you can make an announcement of and bring down the house and get people excited about the Sega brand again. I just feel like that company and its assets have been
trying to make Sonic happen again.
It's been completely mismanaged. Like, it's really disappointing. And this is another case, I feel like, where they're mismanaging it. They're not putting their best foot forward with these older games.
Well, that company. I mean, I'm a Sega fan from back in the original. I mean, Master System days, arcade day. I mean, Shinobi, Space Harrier, all that stuff. Was what I loved the best back then.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I try to be as honest as I can about the failures with modern companies. Is I saw my favorite company go down in flames about 3 different ways in the late 90s. And I knew the Dreamcast was never going to be anything. I loved it.
I didn't. I mean, especially at launch, because that launch was so amazing.
Oh, launch was great.
I was like, wow, like Sega really did it this time.
Yeah, but it wasn't going to matter.
After the Saturn and everything, I mean, and Saturn was a total debacle.
Yeah, some of my favorite games of all time are on the Saturn.
I mean, Sega pulled it. Yeah, but Sega pulled it together for Dreamcast. Had a great launch. Had good hardware. Got me playing online on a console for like the first time ever, and it worked great. Voice chat, a lot of innovation. I mean, you look at games like Seaman, which we talked about like a month or so ago. It started so strong, and it just had nothing because third parties bailed so fast or didn't support it at all. Yep. No EA.
No EA was the kiss of death for that system.
Especially at that point in time.
Yeah, but EA was much more important. EA Sports was way more important at the time.
And I mean, look, Sega filled that void great with its own sports games, which were amazing.
Yeah.
But I think
NFL 2K was the first football game I ever bought.
Yeah, but I think that the lack of EA support just convinced other publishers like, well, if EA's not doing it, and I think Nintendo's fallen into that trap too in the last couple console iterations.
Bit. And I think and EA, never underestimate EA's ability to be the leader of as goes EA, so goes the industry in some ways, and you're seeing that again with VR.
Yeah, for sure.
EA's lack of VR support is a real damage to that effort, and like I can't blame them for not wanting to be involved.
If they made Madden VR, I would be all freaking over it. Or if they made NHL VR, oh my god, my heart might stop.
Or look at Battlefront VR, which I'm pretty sure only exists because Rogue One's marketing budget said make this.
I mean, honestly,
and they did a great job.
They did.
Like clearly, this stuff, Dead Space VR would be something I'd be into.
I think that was more of just an ILM push. They're like, hey, we want to work in this technology, and we're going to build this regardless. So you might as well put it out. But even if they just did like a mini mode of Madden, which is just throwing the ball for VR, and it was just this little side mode that they put in that maybe they worked 6 months on or whatever, like that would convince me to buy Madden. Or if they did it for NHL.
Kind of what they did with the Wii.
Like even if they just put like a shootout mode in NHL and VR, like that would convince me to buy the new NHL or be the virtual goalie. Imagine that, like you playing goalie and having your favorite player, Sidney Crosby, coming at me trying to score on a breakaway. Like, that would be amazing. So, you're right. EA is sort of this flag to the rest of the industry. If it doesn't support something, the rest of the industry gets really nervous about it. And that was sort of the death of the Dreamcast in a lot of ways. So, I don't know. I'm like you. Like, I have this soft spot in my heart for Sega because they're OGs, They were a part of us as kids enjoying games. Just like a lot of the people who are watching this right now or who subscribe to Sifted, for them, like the original PlayStation was the OG. It's like the system they grew up with, the system that they remember trading games with their friends over. Like, that's Sega and Nintendo for us. And so it hurts me to just see it constantly make these missteps over and over again.
That was one of my hardest things adjusting to when I first got into the industry was like, meeting Sega people and kind of dealing with Sega and slowly learning that these people did not know Sega the way I knew Sega.
Right.
Where like
there was just a job.
Yeah,
they're a PR person who came from 5 other publishers before. And
well, at one point I remember I had to explain to one of the Sega PR people what Golden Axe was.
Right.
And it was just it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, no wonder this place doesn't know what to like the fact that you didn't know that that's a thing you should trumpet that Golden Axe is here, is
or at least care about.
Yeah, or at least try. The fact that you didn't register with you as a thing. The fact that you refused to release a goddamn Shinobi collection? What the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Some of those games are great, and they've been out of circulation for not just the Genesis ones, but the Saturn one was really good.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it's ugly now because it uses that Mortal Kombat digitized graphics
Well,
thing,
it's also a Saturn game, which
wasn't
the best. So, yeah, I don't know. I try to stay positive because I know Sega has this cache of IPs that could potentially be hugely successful. They just seem to keep bungling it over and over again.
There's no reason.
I never give up on them.
Right. Well,
I can't quit Sega.
There's no reason a modern Golden Axe or a modern Altered Beast couldn't be good.
Yeah.
A Golden Axe Beast Rider. You look at that conceptually and you're like, that's a good idea.
And then you play it.
It's a terrible game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
What happened? Like it's like there's no. I mean, partly because there's no room for B-listers anymore. But like,
but these shouldn't be.
They shouldn't be B-listers.
Games.
Like you could take the Golden Axe property and make a badass Dark Souls alike.
You could, or just an
Altered Beast.
world action RPG with Golden Axe. It's like just you got to talk to the right developers, and Sega doesn't seem to be able to do that. So. All right, let's move on.
Or how is it in this new era of indie kind of bringing back all the classic genres? How is Streets of Rage not back in some way?
Yeah, because you're getting a lot of that.
Like beat 'em ups are definitely a thing, kind of an undercurrent in the indie scene right now.
Yeah.
Go check out Mother Russia Bleeds if you haven't, because wow.
Yeah.
I think it's called the Takeover is another indie game. It's still in early access, but it's basically straight up 3D Streets of Rage.
Yeah.
And it's just like. Sega has all these properties they could be leveraging, and they don't seem to. They sort of seem to sit there and be like, "What?
Oh, really?
Yeah, make another Sonic game. Go do another Sonic game."
Because they know it's going to sell.
Yeah.
Sadly. So, all right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So, if you remember, Matt, I guess it was 6 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
That
the old train leak.
Yeah, someone was riding on a train and had their laptop open, and it just so happened there was a hardcore gamer sitting next to them who was like, "What's that?"
Knew what he was looking at.
And knew he was looking at the next Tomb Raider, snapped a couple images, disseminated some information out there, and once again, this game has been outed by a weird leak.
Don't look at the classified information on public transit, people.
Yeah.
It's not someone's always paying attention.
Well, this was actually an art firm who had been working on mock-ups and mock-ups for the logo and then artwork for the game. And you can put up that still that we have, Sam. Put it up on its website. And I think a lot of times people who aren't actually hardcore gamers don't understand how rabid and dedicated we are. And how there are people out there who are searching for stuff like this all the freaking time. And they will figure out, they'll see like some listing for, hey, art looking to work on game, whatever. And they'll go back to that website and refresh it for the next 6 months, thinking that something might pop up. And then something like this does ultimately. So these are the first glimpses of Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Based upon that concept art, it looks like it's taken place in South America. I guess
there's some like Mayan-looking pyramid, like step pyramids in this.
Yeah, it's almost like Machu Picchu or whatever.
Yeah. One of the other things I thought was, and a lot of people pointed out was exciting, is she's got her braid back.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would love for that feedback to hit the art company. It's just like the idea that that's what everybody noticed was her hair was back the way the classic style. It's like, people care.
Yeah.
Dude. People care about these little nuances of these properties and characters we've been with for 20 years or something.
Yeah, for sure. So the game's happening. It's a real thing.
It's in there somewhere.
It's Crystal Dynamics is working on the next game. What do you hope for in the next Tomb Raider? Because I almost feel like with Rise of the Tomb Raider, it's like, what else is there?
Yeah.
And I guess that's their job, is to figure out. I mean,
what else is
they should be better at this than we are. We're not the people who are paid to make games.
I mean, I love Rise of the Tomb Raider a lot.
So did I.
I like both of them. I like the original, the
reboot
Tomb Raider a lot. I actually played that 3 times. I never play stuff more than once usually, but I played that 3 times on 3 separate platforms. So the original, the definitive edition on Xbox One, and then I played the PC version. Rise of the Tomb Raider, I've played 1.5 times. I got halfway through the PC version, and I've been wanting to go back and do it again, but I just haven't had time to like start over and play the full thing, but I haven't had time. But I really like this take on the franchise, especially because I never really liked Tomb Raider before.
I didn't either. That's another full disclosure for me. I've never been a big fan of Tomb Raider until the reboot.
I always wanted
Rise.
to be because I like the concept of the archaeologist, like plundering tombs and finding ancient civilizations and shooting dinosaurs and stuff. But like, just like real archaeology. But yeah, you crack that tomb up and a dinosaur comes out. You gotta be ready with the twin pistols. That's what they teach you in archaeology 101.
My friends always played these, so I didn't, and I would go over and hang out with them, and I'd end up watching them play it for a couple hours, and that was enough to let me know that I just never really wanted to play the old ones. But these new ones, I absolutely love them. But I think maybe the bigger question becomes not even with just Tomb Raider, where do games go now? Because we've kind of reached this inflection point where it's almost like, they say in X number of years, everyone on the Earth is going to have the same skin color, because eventually everyone's going to mate together and there's just going to be one skin color for everybody. It could take thousands of years or whatever. But games, I feel like, have kind of got to this place where they've already borrowed so many elements of each other that I almost feel like we've reached that one skin tone.
I know better than to ever think that.
Really?
I think the key here is that if you and I knew what was going to be the next thing that made that leap forward, that made
we'd be rich.
We wouldn't be here.
Right?
We wouldn't be talking about it. We'd be making it.
Yeah. It just feels like it's been a long time since there's been really a new genre.
Well, I mean, there's been a long time since there's more than only 7 stories, really, when you break it down. But you can still find a new way to tell it.
But I mean, we've already seen,
in the case of something like this, like setting goes a long way into something like what Lara Croft does.
Yeah, it does. But I mean, look, MOBA is probably the last new genre, I would think. Mm-hmm. And we're already seeing like MOBA elements coming into all the other genres. I feel like they're running out of ingredients to make the dishes out of.
I think if you're going to constrain it to like something like the action adventure, action RPG hybrid that has sort of become the sort of the standard console game now, but like I would argue something like the future lies in stuff of new genres. I think lies in things like when you mix mobile and VR and AR and that kind of thing together. Stuff like Pokemon Go,
like PlayLink from E3 with Sony.
Yeah, stuff like that. But also like I think Pokemon Go is an example of like
AR
taking things like that. VR is opens. VR is just not there yet. VR whenever VR catches on, and maybe we'll be too old to take advantage of it by the time it does. There will be new genres there because there's new way. It's a new medium. It's a new way to present things.
Well, it's like we saw this week. This guy had built Super Mario Brothers in the real world using HoloLens, where he's literally walking through a park and like a Super Mario Brothers level is laid out in front of him in 3D. You can actually interact with it and jump over stuff and jump up and punch the boxes and that type of thing. But still, technically, it's a 3D platformer that you're playing.
Right, but like proof of concept for things like that is always useful to give people something they recognize so they can kind of understand.
To inspire them. And
you understand sort of the premise of what they're going for, and then from there you use that as a springboard to do something that no one's ever seen before.
I think when I kind of broached this topic, I was more talking about the traditional 2D play on a TV screen video game. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just really starting to wonder where they're going to go from here, other than, wow, that looks a lot better than it did before. I mean, it has been a long time since there's really been a defining genre other than the MOBA. And that was a decade ago. Or maybe more. So when I start to look at games like this and say, okay, let's start thinking about the next Tomb Raider, it's hard to get too excited about the design or the gameplay these days. I think we saw with like A Way Out maybe some new ideas, but even that's kind of been done.
Well, that's why A Way Out doesn't interest me, is because every single gameplay element there has been done to death.
Yeah.
And it hasn't, and it's not. That game didn't seem to have the dynamism that kind of the new Tomb Raider games tend to deliver. Here's the thing: like, I don't care Like when you talk about like that doesn't bother like innovation.
Look, we're going to keep playing these games,
right? Innovation is overrated. I think basically like doing
I disagree with that.
Doing something new is not some kind of guarantee of quality or being good.
But see, I think when you do something
refinement and structure and iteration. Lead you to way better things than, hey, I did this new thing.
But you have to have the person who does the new thing first before any of the other stuff even matters. Like, it's like you just said with, like, that guy who created Super Mario Brothers with HoloLens. Like, that's, like, the inflection point. That's the inspiration point. That's what other people are going to look at and be like, okay, this guy did this cool thing. Now I'm going to take that and I'm going to build on it and create something better and hopefully more polished. Without innovation, this industry would have died 20 years, 30 years ago. You have to have it. It's like, we're total idiots. We're going to play games no matter what until we can't play them anymore. That's just the way it is. It's just a part of who we are. But the vast majority of people who spend money on games are not like us. And if they get bored, that's where the industry gets in deep shit.
But innovation has nothing to do with that audience.
It does, though.
No, it doesn't. Call of Duty is not an innovative series. Call of Duty was not even an innovative game when they came up with it in the first place. It's just a refinement of what already existed, done better than what everybody else did.
But look at Grand Theft Auto. I mean, that's a perfect example of something that flipped the entire industry on its head and was adopted by the mass market eventually. And then eventually, most of the industry is trying to recreate it or creating their own takes on Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, but I would argue that Grand Theft Auto was, a refinement of what already existed.
What?
Body Harvest was already Grand Theft Auto 3.
Right,
Grand
but
Theft Auto 3,
it's made by the same company, though.
Right, but
it's the same studio, the same people.
Right, but I mean, what they're doing in those games is stuff that people talked about but couldn't do yet because it was a technological limitation. Because, I mean, Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2 already kind of have the same idea. Grand Theft Auto 3 just takes the camera and moves it to the street because you couldn't do that before. And you see that, even Zelda Ocarina of Time, with all its innovation for how you control it, was essentially... I mean, look, the Zelda game, not Zelda 2, but the two Zelda games that preceded it desperately wanted to be three-dimensional games. Like the camera is set, especially in Link to the Past, in a way that gives you a depth to the world, and then making it polygonal just sort of realize that desire that you could see in the 2D games. And then the real innovation came in how you control a character in that space.
But Matt, you said that iteration is the real key. Mm-hmm. But you can't iterate until you have the first idea. Without the first idea, there's no such thing as iteration.
Yeah, but if you want to go back to the first idea in terms of genres or games, you're going back to the 80s. There hasn't been innovation in that sense since we were children. Like, it's all refinement, iteration, and presenting it better and finding a new way to make it work, but not necessarily reinventing the wheel. Also, I don't really expect that from Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I mean, Shadow of the Tomb Raider will add a couple of things you can do with a pick and all that kind of thing. This was just
the example that I'm using to get into a deeper discussion about where kind of things are headed, and if indeed we are kind of in this rut where... And I think maybe we've reached to the point, because there are no new genres being made, we've kind of reached the end of the iteration. That's my point.
I just will never, ever agree with that, because every time someone says that, they're wrong. It's like the patent
But
office
what game proves that wrong?
We'll have to wait and see. Beyond Good and Evil could be
But I mean,
one
even
of them.
Go back 5 years and give me a game that proves that wrong.
Proves what wrong?
That we've reached the end of iteration. Other than saying, here's a new setting with a new character... Has there really been any games in the last 10 years where you're like, oh, wow? Like, maybe you go back to the Wii with motion controls and, like, Wii Sports?
I mean, again, like, the Wii in some cases was sort of a evolution of what what arcade games were before. Arcade games kind of had that motion control thing that they developed basically to survive.
Yeah.
Like that thing.
To create a novelty.
To create a thing you couldn't replicate in the home, so you had to go pay $1 at Dave & Buster's to do it. And then the Wii brought some of that stuff home, not on the same visual fidelity level, but that was basically what the Wii was doing, and also the wiggling stuff. I mean, that was all there before. It just it either puts it in a new location or it puts it in a new price point. That's actually probably the more important thing. Is like like visuals like what we see in this Tomb Raider footage. Were they possible like 10-some years ago? Probably, but we couldn't afford the stuff that ran it.
I don't even know if they were possible, honestly, even on like the best supercomputers back
I mean,
then.
if you really took like bleeding edge, like the stuff Pixar used kind of thing, you'd probably get something like that to happen, but it wasn't something that you were going to be able to do in real time.
And I think augmented reality might be the next paradigm shift, because if you think back to when Nintendo first debuted the Wii, it wasn't really like the motion controls and the waggle that had me excited. It was
the sense of presence.
And it was when they first showed Ubisoft's shooter, It was the guy hiding behind the couch. Seriously, that to me is what blew my mind. I was like, oh my God, like your living room becomes like the playground. And of course that was all BS.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Like that never happened. And that was, to me,
In fact, hiding behind the couch means that the Wii thing can't see the controller.
Right,
and
it
going
won't
to die.
work at all, yeah. So...
Whatever happened? You remember that thing that the Xbox or Microsoft had, where it was like supposed to turn the room into the arena? It was supposed to expand. You know, it had lights and projectors and stuff. Supposed to expand the screen space out onto the wall.
That, actually.
It was like a bunch of like.
I mean, that's what HoloLens is now, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, this was like more of a, like almost like a light show, almost. I mean, it was from like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was like. That was sort of like the idea of like how to expand beyond the screen. You would have it be like. It turns the room into the environment kind of thing, you know. And it was I think it was shown as kind of in conjunction with the Kinect tech. And obviously when the Kinect did what it did, that probably went out the window. AR, I mean, again, with AR, I think you're probably right that is I think Pokemon Go also shows that is the kind of the next step.
Just really scratching the paint
but again, like I said, we have to wait for it to be affordable because no one's going to pay $3,000 for a HoloLens.
Well, they're saying that that's a big push for the new iPhone, is the AR, and the new iPhone is supposed to be like the game changer or whatever. We'll see. We've heard that about Apple products before. But
whoever gets that, not right, but whoever gets it affordable and like compelling the first time is going to be, you know, because again, it's not going to be who invented augmented reality. It's going to be about who presents it properly.
Right.
That's always
who makes a compelling experience around it.
Right.
And look, some of the early HoloLens stuff I've seen is pretty freaking mind-blowing. Yeah. But I
like
think
the Conquer thing looks really cool.
Yeah.
He doesn't look very good, but the idea of what they're doing is really neat.
And just the other stuff, too, just being able to kind of project the TV wherever you want in your house. That type of stuff is what will get the casuals, will convince them to jump into the technology and use that as a Trojan horse to get them into the games. But then you think about it, though, there's still no new genres to play even within sort of that paradigm shift. You're still going to be playing, like, shooters and sports games and... I mean, you hope that technology spurs on some new ideas. I mean, we're kind of seeing that again with the PlayLink stuff with PlayStation 4 mobile. You're kind of breaking that fourth wall, so to speak. And maybe there's some new concepts around those kind of ideas for augmented reality. But I still think we're going to end up doing like the same stuff. It's going to be action adventures and RPGs, except it's going to be on your table instead of, you know.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you got to be careful not to sound like the guy who was running the patent office in 1900 who said they should shut the patent office down because there's nothing left to be invented.
Right.
We don't know what's around the corner. We don't know what someone way smarter than us is working on right now. We don't know what's in the pipeline for some of these new technologies and AR stuff, like you say. Like I can't imagine.
I just know that the smartest people in the world have been working on this stuff for a long time, and it seems like they've hit an impasse, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
I mean, you also still got to stick with what sells as well. And again, you never know. Mark Cerny's a really smart man, but he still made Knack.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. If you look at him, he's the guy that you kind of look at that's like, this guy's going to figure it out. But there's hundreds of those guys like that.
Yeah, but he builds your tech. He's not the guy that you go to make your art.
Yeah.
So, although building the tech is an art in itself.
It is, for sure.
I'm just not worried about that. Like that, the medium will evolve the way it's going to evolve, and there's people. These things arise organically much of the time, or arise when suddenly the technology allows you to do something that you couldn't do before, or you'd thought of and would have never attempted before. I think Beyond Good and Evil 2 is an example of that. At least what they're trying to do in that tech demo.
Yeah.
Who knows if they'll pull it off? Like again. Doing something no one's ever done before, No Man's Sky, and making it something everybody wants to play, No Man's Sky, is not the same thing.
Right.
No Man's Sky is an amazing technical achievement, but about 90% of the people who bought it are angry. So,
it may turn them off to other games that look similar.
Right. And at some point, someone may make a No Man's Sky that delivers what people were wanting, and people don't,
Oh, they're trying. There's like 20 No Man's Sky clones.
Oh, sure, but it's also interesting to note that, people don't necessarily want what No Man's Sky was trying to deliver. So the question, I see a lot of people suggest Elite Dangerous instead of No Man's Sky. Elite Dangerous does not offer remotely a similar experience. I mean, if you want to be a space trucker, Elite Dangerous is awesome. But I don't want to be a space trucker. I want to land on science fiction book covers. And eventually. That someone will take that science fiction book cover idea and make something that's fun to play, that gives you content that matters, meaningful content, and lets you still stand on that ridge and see that vista and take that screenshot and say, wow, I was here. and it won't matter that Hello Games did it first. Because the innovation isn't as important as the refinement and the presentation.
But it does matter, because if it wasn't for No Man's Sky, no one would even have had the idea, potentially, for years or maybe ever, to even attempt to do something like that.
Yeah, but see, that's kind of like great man theory of history, and I don't tend to subscribe to that. Someone was going to do that, one way or the other, whether it was Hello Games or somebody else. Maybe
right, but maybe it doesn't
happen
happen for years and years later instead of when it does now. And now we're in that iterative process because Hello Games was brave enough and bold enough and had the great idea to try it first and fail miserably, in my opinion. But still, it inspired all these other people to be like, hey,
but it's because
they've got a great idea there that people got behind and wanted to love. Now let me try to take that football and run with it.
Right, but that's kind of my point, is that they did it. But if you think they're the first people to ever have the idea for that game, you're crazy, because I had that idea for that game when I was 8.
Oh, I mean, look, we sit around and come up with pie-in-the-sky ideas all the time.
Right.
But
and it's more about someone who decides to actually jump on it and do it. But like, you're asking for like new things that no one's ever thought of before for these genres, and that's just not how things happen usually.
It does, though. Somebody had to come up with the side-scrolling platformer. Someone had to come up with the first-person shooter. I mean, someone along the line was the first person to come up with those ideas and then implement them.
But most of that came about because of how the technology worked and what they could make it do. And it's not about sitting there and saying, I'm going to come up with a new genre today. It's more about like, oh, I can make this thing move like that. So if I do that, I could do this. Like that. And like that's a very hard thing to predict in the future because we just don't know what the hardware, what the tools, what the graphical power, what people are working with in development are going to suddenly allow them to do in the next leap, in the next iteration, in the next Unreal Engine, in the next, if Crytek doesn't die in the next 4 years, or what the next Crysis engine lets them do. There's just so many things we can't predict, and like it's so, I'm just not worried about. I can't sit here and tell you that like the new genre that comes out next will be this, because I don't know, because you're not going to know that until someone. It's like they say, like
innovates.
It's not innovation though. It's iteration. It's
well, presumably a new genre would be innovation.
Yeah, but a new genre can be something really, really. It's like
it can be a spark.
But it's like you called MOBA a new genre, but like if you don't know what a MOBA is, it is a new genre. But if you don't know what it is originally, you're looking at Defense of the Ancients back when it was first a mod for Warcraft 3, you're like, well, that's just a game mode,
right?
But it's not. It's more than that. You don't even know a new genre when you see it sometimes, until it develops into what it's going to become. So I just feel like you're worried about something that's a non-issue on that.
I'm not worried. That's not even what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is the industry not coming up with new ideas and the industry doing poorly because of it. That was what I was getting at through this whole discussion, is if the new ideas don't keep coming, it's like you look at, like, Tomb Raider is a perfect example. You look at the Tomb Raider reboot. Huge sales. Mm-hmm. Next one, better game, in my opinion, better game. Sales not as high as that first one. And so it's just natural that people like, great idea, executed well, and then it follows that bell curve down. And my concern is that the whole industry could follow that bell curve if we don't start to get some new and exciting ideas out to people.
See, and my feeling is like the meat, the big hits, the mega hits of the industry have nothing to do with new ideas. Because they're all about what already came before, and you just want more of the same. Because that's what Call of Duty is. That's what Madden is. That's
right, but look at Call of Duty, Matt.
Yeah,
its sales are down.
And what was the game that had the worst sales? The newest idea they've tried in 10 years.
Yeah.
And this new one, which is going back to World War II, which is what Call of Duty started as, I will bet you their sales are going to be right back up where they were.
Well, because now that's what's innovative. Is a World War II game is now it is though. They went down this futuristic path, but that's the way it is.
That's not a new idea.
It's just like somebody wearing bell bottoms now. It's like, wow, they're really progressive. They decided to wear bell bottoms.
Well, that was just a cycle of fashion, and that's a separate thing. But it is true.
That cycle applies to everything, though. It's not just fashion. Like everything in our lives, everything old is new again. That's how it works. It's
but you can't move the goalposts like that, and all of a sudden say a World War II first-person shooter is a new idea, because it's not.
Neither is wearing bell bottoms. But suddenly someone wears bell bottoms and someone says, hey, I think they're cool again, and it becomes this thing again.
But
it's not just that way
new.
With games. Music works that way. Everything. The problem is with
I think you've come back around to my iteration idea again.
It's not, though. The problem is
that's the definition of reiteration of trends of fashion and music. Like you take what's come before and you make it something that people haven't heard before.
I'm making my point that as you get to a certain point where you can't iterate anymore, and you need that new paradigm shift to iterate. And if you don't find it, you go into that cycle where everything's repeated. Like now we're playing another World War II Call of Duty game instead of some new idea. And look, a space shooter is nothing new. It's not like those Call of Duty games where the first-person shooter is set in space or
No, but in
zero gravity.
context of Call of Duty, Infinite Warfare is the newest idea they'd tried in ever, maybe?
Right. But so that's what
Probably
happens,
since
though.
they
People
made the Black Ops leap,
But
or
see,
the Modern Warfare
that's
leap.
what happens, though. People get lulled by repetition into this place where they think something old is new because there isn't anything new. And so they get tired of what they're having, and suddenly they're like, hey, remember this thing from 10, 20 years ago? Well, let's like it again because I haven't seen it in so long that suddenly it becomes innovative. So I love discussions like this, by the way, because it really kind of dives deep into game theory and really looking at...
Yeah, but I still think you're agreeing with me without realizing it, because, like, coming back around to, like, the World War II thing is just exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to iterate on that old idea in a way that no one's seen before because the technology wasn't there before.
But I think we have seen it before. I haven't seen anything from Call of Duty World War II that looks anything different from Call of Duty World at War, other than playing in 1080p.
But people who look at games the way we are not the people that make that series a 5 million selling installment versus a 10 million selling installment.
Right.
Like, the people you're worried about that are going to, like, abandon the industry and make the sales bad because of the lack of innovation, they don't want the innovation. They want, like you say, they want the trend. They want the cycle.
Well,
the cycle is what works.
Well, the other part of it too is that
that's why there's
like
so much stagnation, is because the stagnation sells.
Well, the other part of it too is that gaming is generational. While the average age of the gamer now is 33, more than half of the people who play games and say they're hardcore gamers, by the time they hit their 30s, they quit and they don't play anymore. They fall out of love with it, and so you lose half of that market. But then there's that whole other generation of kids who are coming up, who are now 15 years old, who is playing Mario and Nintendo games, and now they're old enough to play the M-rated games. They never played World at War. So to them, a World War II shooter at this point is something brand new.
If they even care about that kind of game in the first place.
Right.
I mean, based on what you're saying, I look forward to the maybe 10 to 15 years from now, there's going to be some real hardcore M-rated endless runners.
It's possible.
Because what's going to happen when a bunch of kids who grew up playing mobile games, in their formative years, hit their nostalgia bump?
Yeah, or if they ever even transition over into...
That's true.
I mean, I feel like a lot of people who are on mobile are just going to stay on mobile, or whatever is given to them on the device.
My niece is transitioning to console stuff. She plays PC stuff and console stuff. She loves the 3DS, and she asked for a Switch for her birthday, making her the first person I know who wanted a Switch for non-work purposes.
Well, you are her uncle.
Yes.
So she's on a different curve from a lot of people.
It's in the genetics somehow, I'm sure.
Well,
and her father is as much of a gamer as we are.
Right, and I'm sure she looks up to you, and she's like, I wish I could do that someday, and she thinks to herself, how can I become like Matt so I can do what he does?
No, she doesn't. She looks up to the Minecraft streamers.
Oh, really?
She watches Minecraft YouTube. She doesn't watch this show, believe you me.
I don't want her watching this show. That'd be really bad.
I think my brother-in-law, she's like, look, it's Uncle Matt on the thing. She's like, mm-hmm. And it goes back, goes back to Jerome Assetti or whatever.
Right. All right, let's move on. We're going to talk next about another game that was conspicuously missing at E3, and that game is Halo 6. We talked about it, I think, in our pre-Microsoft press conference.
Speaking of stuck in a rut.
Hype-up show, that we felt like we needed to see the next Halo as sort of that benchmark game that the average person would look at and say, okay, I know what Master Chief looks like on Xbox One and Xbox One S. This is what he's going to look like.
Man, it didn't even need to be Halo 6. It could have just been like a real-time demo of Master Chief. Like, you didn't have to say, "Oh, it's Halo 6." No, just show me Master Chief on the X.
Show me his in-game model in an environment to see what I'm going to get for my $500.
Yeah, it's like you want to see what Mario looks like on the new Nintendo system. Yeah. You want to see what Nathan Drake looks like on the new Sony system. I was like, not Crash Bandicoot. That's over.
That's
even though that is
Sony, it doesn't have that that character really that you maybe Snake.
Yeah, maybe yeah. Not anymore.
No, yeah, maybe never again.
Although maybe that's a good point. Maybe like what Kojima looks like on the new Sony hardware.
Right.
Maybe that's the benchmark for that. And you want to see what Master Chief looks like on the new Xbox.
And so they announced this week that we are not going to get a look at Halo 6 for a quote-unquote long time.
It really, there's a recent interview with Frank O'Connor and a couple of the other 343 Industries guys. It really did sound like they were going back to the drawing board after 5. Like they felt like 5 was a misfire in a lot of ways.
Well, 4 was a worse misfire.
4 was way worse. And also, like, 5, according to Pactor and a couple other people, 5's doing real well in terms of being an microtransaction,
and
being
money
and keeping people playing and being an active and living multiplayer game. So I assume they're just talking about the campaign. Because they do, despite how much of a multiplayer game Halo is, they do place a lot of emphasis on the lore.
No, you're right. It's one of those franchises where they will never release a Halo without a campaign.
No,
like,
for
ever.
Sure.
And there are some franchises where I can't say that. Like, I could literally see a day where Call of Duty may not have a campaign.
Yeah,
that would not shock me at all if there's eventually. But Halo, I would never see that happening. And I honestly don't know why that is. But I also feel
at this point, no. I'm just like, we might be done. I don't know.
I know. But I also feel like it's the one franchise where fans would be really angry if there weren't a campaign. Like, people have a lot of emotions built up into Master Chief Saga. I mean, that's just really all there is to it.
And somewhere in there, I'm sure Microsoft still wants to make that movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they still talk about it every once in a while, so it's still kind of on the radar. I think the bigger question here is that we have Microsoft's new console coming, Xbox One X, and it needs this game. I feel like, to succeed. And if if Microsoft is saying we're not going to see this game for a while,
what in the world are you putting out in 2018?
Right, and then how long until we play it? Because this isn't Microsoft is not one of those, in Halo in particular, is not a franchise where they show it and then release it 3 months later. That's just not how it works. It's at least an 18-month window.
Yeah, I feel like Microsoft is really starting to hit the Nintendo problem, where the only thing to keep your system selling is whether people want to play your own internal exclusive games. And they just don't have the manpower, the bandwidth to keep up with it. And the problem is, like, at least when Nintendo finally puts a game out like once a quarter, it's like, it's Mario or it's Zelda. And where in this, it's like it's Crackdown.
Yeah.
Like the draw just isn't there. I mean, Nintendo has survived because Nintendo's games come out on a certain quality level and have a built-in fan base, have a built-in interest to them. Whereas Microsoft doesn't have that.
I think the biggest mistake Microsoft made was killing Fable, in all honesty.
I think you're right.
I think Fable
I don't know the biggest mistake, but killing Fable is definitely a mistake.
I mean, to me, it is that one franchise that did have a dedicated fan base.
And it's not like anything else they have.
Right, and it would come back every time, and it would generally at least be quality. And it also had the flexibility to be somewhat of a different experience every time.
And it felt like one or two more, they might have finally gotten what it was supposed to be.
Right. They might have finally hit Peter Molyneux's dreams. But to me, that was a huge mistake. Closing Lionhead was a huge, huge mistake. Because you're right, now they're stuck in this rut where they have, like, Forza. It's like Forza is always going to be Forza.
Yeah. And it's great. It's like, it's good. I'm glad it's there. But you can't base a launch around it. You can't expect that to bring me back every fall. Like,
and you can't expect it to be like a system seller, like Breath of the Wild was. Like that one game that was like, oh, I need it. Like it's just not, and you need more than one of those. Nintendo has more than one of those. Microsoft really doesn't. It has Halo, which has fallen on kind of hard times the last couple entries.
I saw an interesting, somebody said on Twitter, I can't remember who it was, but he said the Microsoft problem is it needs a franchise with eyes.
No, you're right.
Which is like, you're right.
A
human face. They need something to look at and identify with. Because right now it's cars and a guy in a BMX helmet.
Yeah.
And
they had that with Fable, though.
Yeah, they did.
I mean, that was their one franchise.
They could have had it with Crackdown, but Crackdown doesn't look very good.
Yeah, it really doesn't. And it also doesn't really have an iconic character either that people can relate to. It's like this ever-evolving, shifting group of people.
Are we in kind of just a general zeitgeist way? Are we really interested in a game about super-powered, like, ultra cops?
No.
Is that really where we are as a nation?
No, it's really not.
I feel like that's not really the fantasy at this point.
I think it should be the other end, actually, based upon the things that have been going on lately. I just feel like without Halo right out of the gate, that Xbox One X is going to have a really tough time.
I would agree with that.
And without even the prospect of, at least I know what Halo's going to look like on Xbox One X. We have nothing.
Especially when you're asking for that much money.
That actually, whoever you got that quote from, that is a very profound statement. That Microsoft needs a character with frickin' eyes to look into for people to connect with it. That's one of the best quotes about games I've heard in a long time. It's absolutely 100% right. Because even Halo, it's like, part of the whole gig with Halo is you don't know what Master Chief looks like. Like, Think about that. How absurd is that? Like, even Nintendo with Samus eventually relented. It was like, here she is. This is what she... Now, it's not even weird to think about the time before we didn't know what she looked like. Like, there's Zero Suit Samus in Smash Brothers. Like, we know what she looks like now. Even Nintendo figured it out, like, hey, having this faceless character, it worked for the 16-bit era, but we need our users to connect with this person that's behind this helmet, and Microsoft still hasn't figured that out. So, I really just, we're a week out of E3, and I was talking about at the beginning of the show, after kind of the dust settles and you actually kind of catch up on a little sleep and you actually have a couple decent meals and talk to the people who actually give a crap about you, and you kind of get back to reality a little bit, because you do kind of live in this fantasy E3 bubble for like 2 weeks during like the prep for the show and then doing the show and not sleeping, and then you have 3 days to recover from all that. You start to see things a little more clarity. And look, I wasn't hype on Xbox One X after the press conference, and now that I'm a week out from the show, it just seems like even more of a disaster to me.
I mean, look, like, I would not buy an Xbox One X, an Xbox, for Halo 6. Like Halo doesn't hold cachet with me as much anymore.
I think a lot of people would
It's going to be a struggle to even bother to play Halo 6 whenever it comes out for me. But if we're talking about a macro
I'm still excited by the franchise.
But we're talking about like a macro sort of like, are people going to buy it? Are the sales numbers going to be worthwhile? Like, and I think like, having that Halo tease there would help that. Like,
for sure.
If people could look forward and see that, especially now if you're saying it's way, way out, that means because of the time spacing, their big quote-unquote game for the end of next year is probably going to be Gears 5.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that has any weight to it anymore. And like Halo's lost some punch, no question, but I still think Halo is a bigger punch than Gears of War ever was.
Oh, for sure. It still is bigger than Gears of War, without a doubt. I mean, you look at like Nintendo with Switch. It had the benefit of having one of the most highly reviewed games ever at its launch, and even people who maybe waffled on, oh, well, I was never a huge Zelda fan, I kind of believe these reviews, but I don't really know if I want to buy a system just for Zelda. They at least had Mario to look forward to and be like, well, if I don't like Zelda that much, I still got Mario at the end of the year, and it's worth it. And you're not seeing either of those with Xbox One X.
Yeah. Although I think, it's, again, if you want to make I think a one-to-one comparison on that with Nintendo and Microsoft would be closer to Halo versus Fable. Whereas Fable, because that's the other thing about Mario and Zelda is they are, huge, the two biggest games Nintendo has, other than Pokemon, when they don't fully have Pokemon because the Pokemon company owns that. But like the strength of Zelda and Mario in the same year is that they're very, very, very different games.
Yeah.
And you get two very different experiences that are both really high quality. Whereas, like, let's say you release Halo and Gears of War in the same year. Is that
not
all
the
that
same
different?
impact?
No,
Yeah,
it's not.
The same
It's just like shooting things from a different perspective, basically, at best. And like, whereas like, okay, give me Gears of War 5 and a new Fable, a Fable 4, or a Fable reboot or something like that. Then I'm interested because there's a variety to look at there. There's two very different games you're out, but I just feel like Microsoft's offerings for the last 5 years, like they constantly feel the same game in a different coat.
Yeah.
Like it's.
Yeah, you're right.
Literally with Forza in some ways, in terms of just a new coat of paint, but like, when is Gears all that different from Crackdown? Is a big man with a gun shooting stuff? Like, there's got to be more to it. And then you're killing Scalebound, you're killing Fable heroes, like you're pulling away the things that give me a different kind of vibe, and I don't know what you're replacing it with, because at this point the answer is nothing.
And that Fable game was done pretty much. It was in beta. That's insane. It really. I don't know what Microsoft is thinking.
I'm surprised they didn't at least like recycle it into like a $20 single player game or something.
Yeah, sure. Like, give us what's there. Some people will pay for it, and like it was set up to be free to play anyway. You might as well put it out there and make a little bit of money.
Maybe like don't do a retail release. Just
what's it going to cost you in server costs to run that game?
Yeah.
Like, it already built a community. A lot of people were disappointed whenever they found out it was canceled, who had been playing the beta. So, and that was at least innovative. At least it had taken Fable in a new direction. Although I would be totally fine if they just made a new Fable.
Yeah.
With a new plot and a new setting, like
with a little more, a new approach to it, kind of a different angle on it. Again, iterate it.
Yeah.
Take what worked, use that, make it better, throw out what didn't work, and there's a lot that didn't work.
And there's also a lot of
Actually
leeway
finished the
with
game
that
this
franchise.
time. Yeah.
I mean, Fable could go any direction.
Oh yeah, you see that in Fable 3, which I think had a lot of problems, but like the fact that they decided to just go to Egypt basically
Right.
and have this whole new area. I mean, you could expand that world out in so many different ways.
Even the name is so innocuous. It's like
Yeah,
Fable.
Fable.
It's
Could
a
mean
Fable.
anything.
It could mean anything.
And it's like, it's exciting the way God of War is, where it's like, yeah, they're taking him to a different pantheon, taking him to Norse mythology. Like, he can go anywhere.
Yep.
Like, people have talked about that for years on the God of War games, especially when they get tired of playing the same God of War game over and over again. They're like, can't he kill different gods for once? And here we go. And, like, Fable has that same strength where it's like, it can do anything. It wasn't, his name wasn't Ares. His name is God of War, and there's gods of war all over the world in mythology. So you can take that stuff anywhere, and I think it's time for Fable to use. But again, when I mentioned it in our pre-E3 stuff, I think you asked, who's going to make it? And well, that's the question, isn't it?
Yeah. Microsoft has the money to start a studio,
True.
a successful studio.
True.
Give it to Ubisoft.
Give it to anybody.
Anybody. Like, seriously. There's a million things you can do to make sure that franchise survives. So, thinking back to Microsoft's press conference, how it started, it's like 44 games that are exclusive or timed exclusive, then 22 exclusive games. And you're just like, where are all those games? Why, if that is the truth, why do I have no excitement for Xbox One X at all? Like, it's mind-boggling to me. All right, let's move on to our last topic of this week's show.
How about another Sunset Overdrive?
Yeah.
Nobody cared about that game.
No, it
I love that game.
It was a great game. Deserved better than it got, but ultimately it didn't sell. And that is the death knell for any video game franchise. It doesn't sell, no one's going to pick it up.
I think we are going to see some lessons from that in Spider-Man, though.
Oh, I think we already kind of have, actually. Just even in that demo they showed at E3.
If you have an Xbox One and you haven't played Sunset Overdrive, play Sunset Overdrive. It's really good.
And maybe that is part of what maybe turned Microsoft off to these new ideas. I mean, that game tanked so hard.
Real hard.
And I'm sure they gave Insomniac a boatload of money for the development of that game. And it lost its ass on it.
Here's the other thing about Sunset Overdrive is like the trailers and stuff, like the E3 marketing and all that stuff, turned me completely off it.
Yeah.
It just felt
It was too
forced
broy.
and too and then like 10 minutes after I started to play it, I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
And it's totally not what the marketing material made it out to be.
mismarketed,
It was really
essentially.
badly presented.
Yeah, it was like a Mountain Dew commercial.
Yeah.
That's pretty much how they marketed that game. So,
And I think the other
and
mistake
if there's
they
anything
made,
we know, is that gamers hate
Mountain Dew and Doritos. So they worship at the Pope's house, but they don't buy it. And the other thing is, like, I think it's a mistake to have the crux of your CG trailer reveal to be a guy making fun of the games I like to play.
Yeah.
Where they spent the whole time like kind of mocking the Call of Duty style thing. It's
yeah.
like, hey, don't alienate your entire audience
Yeah.
by saying like, hey, like your game sucks and you should play us instead because we're wacky.
Or,
It's like,
right, or just pick one
Yeah.
instead of just going on a list.
But now we're off on the. It's so hard to like focus on one thing. I think Microsoft is doing wrong.
Yeah, it really is.
I don't know what happened. Like it has to
The
be
fall was fast and swift.
Yeah.
It's first-party software. It always comes down to it. What exclusives do you got? And it just doesn't have any, and it doesn't look like it's got a lot of compelling ones for the near future.
I just love like to have an E3 one of these years where I don't feel like where when I think about you ask me who won E3 of the major console makers, and I actually have to think about Microsoft.
Yeah.
Because it's not, in terms of the software, it's just not there.
It
hasn't
really
been
isn't.
for a long
I
time.
can't remember Microsoft winning in an E3 in forever. Xbox 360 era.
Yeah, 360 era, sure. Like, and Microsoft's conference used to be where the WoW stuff happened. Like, you remember it was 2007, I think, was the one where they took everything to Santa Monica and ruined it all.
Yeah.
But like that was at the Santa Monica High School auditorium, and that was the one where they opened with Modern Warfare 2, and was Modern Warfare or Modern Warfare 2? It was Modern Warfare because it's 2007.
Yeah, you're right.
And it was from the Chernobyl level, and like
Yeah.
the guys are talking, and then in the ghillie suits, and they just stand up, and the whole audience
Erupted.
Went,
Yeah.
it was just a gasp.
Yeah,
like you could
yeah.
hear, and you couldn't hear it. You can't hear it on the videotape. Like when you watch the video of
Yeah.
it, because the crowd's not mic'd, because they never mic the crowd, because. But I was standing there and hearing the whole crowd go, oh, like, it was
Yeah.
like a huge moment, and like
That
it
doesn't
wasn't
happen
Microsoft, it was
anymore.
as Activision, it was Call
Right.
of Duty, but it's like. That was the kind of thing you expected from the Microsoft conference, and it's
But
just
see,
hasn't been
Microsoft's
there
even
forever.
lost that too.
Oh yeah,
it's
'cause
even
they
lost
it to
like the
Sony.
big third-party stuff. Sony's taking control of all that as
How
well.
in the world is Destiny at Sony now? Like, because it's like think about the 360 era. There's no way anyone would have played an online-only game anywhere but the 360 if they had a choice.
And
now it's
the really
completely
crazy
turned around.
part is that Microsoft, if you think about the 360 era, it did everything possible to try and fail.
Yeah.
I mean, its first 10 million consoles were junk that had to be replaced.
Mm-hmm.
And it survived all that to thrive. And now the hardware's fine. It's the content that it can't get right.
It's so small.
It's crazy. All right, let's move on. Our
Get
last
rid
topic.
of the power brick. It's just, yeah.
So E3's over. Inevitably, some games are going to slip through the cracks. When there's literally, especially with mobile now and VR, there's just thousands and thousands of games that are at E3 each year.
And the indie scene becoming so huge. I mean,
yeah.
You're almost getting to the point where indie can't be called indie. You know,
Not
like
really.
There's so much crossover and where the funding comes from and promotional stuff.
I would make the argument that 60% of the show floor was indie games.
Yeah,
like if you go to Microsoft's booth, probably 70% of the games you could actually play were indie games. I was thankful for Microsoft for doing that.
And it's also fast because like the B and C list stuff that went away from the major publishers after it became too expensive to let something like that fail. Like, nature abhors a vacuum, and that the indie scene kind of filled that niche.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I think they're filling it with way better games than what we would get.
They're not
from
as
the
flashy.
B tier. Yeah.
But
they're not as flashy,
they're
but
more
better
compelling,
games.
more emotionally moving, without a doubt. Yeah, and ultimately, I think that is what players look for. I think really, like, even though the surveys we just saw, like, people were like, "Oh, graphics is one of the first things I care about." I still disagree with that. I don't think that's
I still care about graphics. But like Nex Machina's graphics are awesome.
Yeah.
And like, are they cutting edge? I need my Titan X to sweat to run it. No
cutscenes.
No cutscenes. No problem. But it looks great. I think it looks, like art style and like execution are way more important than like bleeding edge polygons.
You're absolutely right. Or voxels, damn it.
Voxels.
So anyway, we want to talk about a couple games that caught our eye at the show that may have kind of slipped through the cracks for you, or you just didn't notice, or maybe we didn't cover it, God forbid. I was just on Podcast Reload this last week, which is a Civic community podcast. So my pick may actually be a bit redundant for some of you, but the irony is that Matt wanted to pick the game as well. So and there's a lot of people that watch GameFace.
The game you picked is kind of a no-brainer for the subject, though, because it really was amazing and ignored.
Yeah. And look, a lot more people watch GameFace than watch Podcast Reload. You guys may not even watch that episode. So I'm going to talk about the same game again. Some of you know what I'm going to talk about. But Matt, what game did you pick as a game that kind of slipped through the cracks?
Well, I was going to pick your game. Yeah. And then my second pick would probably be Ni no Kuni 2, but we already talked about that last week.
A lot, yeah.
So my pick is Matterfall.
Yeah.
Which
I didn't even realize was at E3 again. I really didn't.
Now, this is Housemarque again, the same people that made Nex Machina.
Yeah.
They're on a roll. And this is a side-scrolling, platforming, twin-stick shooter in sort of the Metroid vein.
With voxels.
With voxels.
As you can see right there.
And so basically...
this is not the game, though, right? This is all CG.
No, this is all CG. The
stuff.
game is basically is a 2D is a side-scrolling Metroid-alike. It's probably closest you get to it. It looks like Metroid. Or similar to like Shadow... What was that one? The by Chair Interactive on the 360, it was Shadow.
Oh, Complex.
Shadow Complex. Yeah, it's like sort of like that. But you shoot with the right stick, so it's still twin stick controls. There's a little bit of Ikaruga in it, in that like you're shielding that matters what color your character versus the environment of the bullets are. You can use the gun to create platforms in special areas. It was kind of like, so you can jump up and down through areas. It's kind of a maze sort of thing. And you use it to bust barriers. Purple is bad again. Like, things encased in purple and you blow it up and there's a guy gets free. And so there's a lot of demos of this. Like, if you watch actually the Sony streams demo of this with the
we actually have a demo.
It's really good.
To,
I definitely saw it on Sifted. A couple of demos.
I just haven't been able to watch it, unfortunately.
And it's just really cool. It's not that complex. You're not looking at and be like, oh my god, there's like nothing I've ever seen before. No, it's a refinement.
Is it like a shmup though? Is it bullet hell type?
There are bullet hell elements, but in this, kind of in this, how like Nier has bullet hell elements, but it's still an action RPG.
Right.
It's like that. So there's bullet hell elements, especially in like the boss stuff with this, but it's more of in the way that this is, Nex Machina is their twin stick shooter take on Robotron. with modern lessons to it. This is like their twin-stick shooter take on Metroid.
Interesting.
Is what I'd call it. It reminds me of that. It's got a little bit of Ikaruga to it. It's got a little bit of Outland to it. You remember that Ubisoft game?
Yep.
And it just, again, it looks cool. It looks like it has that satisfying feel that their voxel-based games have. And because it's Housemarque, I have no doubt it will be awesome. And you should keep an eye on it. No one talked about it at all during.
They really didn't. It completely flew under the radar. Housemarque is turning into one of those developers.
Yeah.
Where every game it makes, you should pay attention to
yeah,
it.
I
And it is
think
also
so.
starting to ramp up its production. There was 2 games debuted by Housemarque at E3, in addition to the stuff we already knew about. So it is quickly rising up the ranks, at least to the top tier of indie guys.
For sure.
And they have their own style, too. It's like they're not like doing like walking simulators or emotional adventure games or first-person like survival horror games.
And they're the best at what they do.
And they stick to it. Yeah.
And they know that, but they don't make the same game over and over again.
Yeah.
They use the same concept, but they apply it to different classic genres, and they see what they come up with. And
I love that.
That's a really exciting
I really
way
love
to
it. I
approach
think
it.
that is such a cool way to develop games. You have these little elements that are kind of like your tenets that you're always going to stick to, and you're always going to find a way to get those into your games while still going across the vast sort of swath of genres out there. So I'm all over Housemarque right now.
They got about 3 genres left, and then they're going to have to start repeating themselves.
And then actually my pick, and the pick that Matt wanted to choose as well, for Misconnection at E3 is Hunt Showdown. And again, if you've already listened to or watched Podcast Reload, this is going to be a bit of a repeat for you. But this is a game that, to me, Crytek completely dropped the ball on it.
Well, Outland was Housemarque, according to the impartialists in the chat. So that would explain that.
That would explain it. That's great. We're going to talk about Hunt Showdown. And to me, Crytek had to have left E3 just being like, man, we screwed up so bad, because I managed to go into this demo just because a friend of mine basically tipped me off and said, hey, there's this game that Crytek's showing. You should go check it out. It's one of the more unique things I've seen at the show. I'm very thankful that I got that tip, because I then went over and was able to watch this played in person. And essentially what you're seeing right now is what I saw at E3. I think another YouTuber or a YouTube channel had got in and recorded some footage. But this is the actual demo that they basically showed everybody behind closed doors at the show. That was a huge mistake. This game should have been blown out at E3. Everybody should have been coming out of the show talking about this game.
I mean, I think part of the problem here is that it's PC only.
I guess. I mean, it's going to come to consoles, though.
In some form, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right now, the way it looks, I don't think it would run on a console. Maybe Xbox One X?
I don't know. If Metro Exodus can run, this is not crazy beyond that.
Yeah, this game is gorgeous, though, on top of it all.
I mean, it's Crytek. And of course, Crytek also seems like it's not in the greatest position right now, so it's be nice to see them get some attention and some
really
sales.
Stupid name. It's like the dumbest name for a video game
every
ever.
single time I mention, even when I went to pick it, first you texted me and say pick the thing. I'm like, I had to go to my computer and go to Sifted and look up what it's called, because it's the most generic, boring title ever.
And it started life as a different game that had some similar elements. And
they announced it in like 2014 or something.
Yeah, and they've just kind of morphed it into this game here. And so what it is it's an asymmetrical multiplayer game that up to 5 teams of 2 play. And by asymmetrical, it's a little bit like Evolve in that there's a main boss target.
Like in this demo, they're hunting for a spider monster thing.
Right.
But they spend a lot of time avoiding the other player teams.
Right. Well, it depends.
Yeah, but like they'll see like lights or gunfire and be like, all right, let's go over here.
So stealth is a big part of this. Knowing when to use your weapons, knowing when to use your lights, because it's really dark, and so you can see how easy it is to see someone using their flashlight. And it's competitive and cooperative, and that's kind of where the rub comes in, because the ultimate goal is to find the boss and kill the boss and be the team that kills the boss. But you kind of need the other teams to survive to the boss fight to help you kill the boss, because one team of 2 is going to have a hell of a time defeating the boss. So you don't want to completely wipe out all the other teams, because then you will have problems killing the boss. So it's this sort of balancing act that you have to maintain between keeping enough of the enemy teams around to help you ultimately complete the objective, but taking out enough of them that there aren't so many that the end of the game doesn't become a total CF. I've not played for a game like, and you also have rank and file enemies that are scattered out throughout the environments to keep the tension up, that also make you make these tough decisions on whether you should attack them or fight them, because if you do that, you're signaling to the other 4 teams, hey, I'm over here and I'm fighting something, which could make the other team come over and be like, well, we'll wait until they're distracted by these zombie enemies, and we'll just swoop in for the easy kill. There's all these mind games that go on.
There's like sections where you can hear them, the players saying like, just use your knife.
Right.
Don't shoot.
Yeah, because the muzzle flash could send one of the other teams over to get you. And you also get clues. So we just saw there, you get a clue of where the boss is. You have no idea where the boss is. It's not like you start each match and you're like, oh, the boss is here. And you have to discover clues. They'll show flashes of the boss. And based upon those images that you see, you have to kind of disseminate where the boss might be. And then once you discover the boss, it's kind of a race to kill the boss. But once you kill the boss, it's not over either. It's kind of like the Division in that you have to be extracted from each map. So there's so many inflection points in each match where you can decide to attack the enemy or hide and wait or wait in ambush. I mean, you could conceivably wait until everything happens and just hide in the bushes and wait for them to get extracted after killing the boss and just kill them right there. Like, there's so many different strategies to this game, and I think that's what sets it apart from all the failures that have been the asymmetrical multiplayer games in the past. And then you pile on the awesome tech and the setting and the mood and everything else, and literally, like, this game should have been in the top 5 nominees for Game of the Show at every publication. And the only publication that I have seen after looking at everyone's awards that even recognized this game when they put out their awards initially was PC Gamer. And so PC Gamer obviously has a bit of an advantage in that it only covers PC games. But none of the other big sites even acknowledged this game. Now they are. Yeah. Now they're starting to talk about it.
But during E3, the only place I saw this game mentioned was in Sifted's feed.
Right. Yep. And that's just because we curate everything,
right.
You know, and like a lot of websites, they have to pick and choose while the show is going on. For us, it's just like, man, everything, gimme, gimme, gimme. And so we managed to kind of expose this to some of our users a little early, but I am all over this game, man. I am so excited for this game. Like, this is the type of game that gets you to upgrade, like, your graphics card, provided they don't announce it for Xbox One X before it ever comes out, which is highly possible, I think.
It would be a good thing for them to have.
In fact, that would be something that Microsoft... In fact, if Microsoft were smart right now, it would lock down the exclusive on this game.
That's very true.
It would lock it down and say, hey...
That would be a very strong argument for me to get an Xbox One X.
It absolutely would. Lock that sucker down. Xbox One X exclusive for 6 months, then let them release it on PC as a cross-platform play.
Even if they do release it on PC at the same time, I'm going to know a lot more people playing on Xbox than on PC.
Yeah, but I mean, look, with Microsoft's new program where it's like Windows 10 and Xbox, it's like it's a natural fit. It has no publisher right now. Crytek, this is a Crytek 100% game. It is just,
Microsoft should jump on that.
Is on the tee to take this game right now, and I would not be shocked. Seriously, though, I mean, it could be.
I was just thinking, like, you said that, and I thought of, like, you know, golf, and then
that was the analogy.
I was like, Microsoft, maybe it's T-ball.
Yeah. But I am really excited for this game. I'm glad that we're able to kind of expose it to you guys on GameFace so you guys can check it out and start getting excited for it. I think right now there's like a teaser trailer and 2 gameplay walkthroughs up on Sifted curated for it.
Yeah, and I also really like that the spider they fight moves as fast as a spider does.
Oh, yeah. It's not like this slow, like lumbering, like whatever thing. And I wouldn't be surprised either if the bosses become more...
where'd it go?
Right.
Where is it? There it is. It's, like,
so fast,
It's really cool.
Yep. So once you beat the spider, you collect the bounty, but then you have to extract that bounty out. And so it's a race to get the bounty, and it's a race to get to the extraction point, and maybe there's someone sitting there waiting.
And because of how you banish, it's real obvious to everybody where you are.
Yeah, because when you do stuff in this game, it alerts people on the map to where you are, and that just helps build the tension and the unexpected nature of the game. It's awesome. It's crazy that this game was at E3 and just went completely under the radar. So definitely one to keep an eye on. This might be a game that you might want to follow on Sifted. Just go to his game page and click the gear next to his title and click follow. That way, anytime something new published for this game, is curated to sift it. It will pop up to the top of your sift. I have a feeling Crytek fielding lots of calls for this game right now, not just from Microsoft, but from lots of publishers. I mean, you don't get games of this quality and this innovative just sitting out there without somebody publishing it very often. So if it doesn't get snapped up by Microsoft, it's going to get snapped up by somebody and very quick. So there you go. Those are our undercover misconnections for E3 2017. It's time to go on to our trailer of the week, which is your cue to start getting questions into the chat. And we realize this is a little bit of a shorter episode this week, so we'll answer a few more questions than normal. So make sure you get those in. Our trailer of the week was another late addition to the E3 media storm.
And in fact, addresses something I think we were asking the question of during E3.
Yeah.
Which was, where was gameplay for this?
Right. So The Evil Within 2, they debuted it with 2 great trailers. I mean, they're crazy, but they didn't show the game actually being played. And then E3 ends, and 2 days later, Bethesda puts out the first gameplay trailer. And because a lot of you guys, I know, you left the site after E3 was over, you're like, either I need a break or I think I've seen everything. I wanted to get this into GameFace because we know this is the one thing all you guys watch. And so here is the first gameplay trailer for The Evil Within 2.
Hello? Sebastian, are you there?
Lily?
More excited or less excited now that you've seen it?
About the same.
Really?
I never played Within very much.
Oh, okay.
And didn't find it particularly compelling. I'm not a survival horror guy.
I'm more excited after seeing the gameplay stuff.
I like the look of it. Very Silent Hill, very Jacob's Ladder.
Yeah,
But,
and if we're not going to get a new Silent Hill, then...
Might as well, yeah. Hopefully they let this one have enough time to bake.
Yeah.
The first one feels kind of unfinished in
Yeah.
a way.
It's a little rough around the edges.
Snuck out a little bit.
Yeah.
It was cheap during the E3 sale on PlayStation Network, though, so maybe some people picked it up and can try it. But this one's right around the corner. I hope it's better. The other trailer I think that came out this week I was interested in was Hellblade.
Yeah, that was a great trailer as well.
Which
yeah.
doesn't show you really much any gameplay, but it does have a really creepy giant baby phantom monster thing.
It does,
so.
yeah. That's one of those
Check that
wait
one
for
out,
it
too.
trailers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good trailer. Be patient and wait right till the end there. Let's see. Here's a really long question from Eric Estrada, 12. How do you guys feel about Sony stating that they are not going the yearly iteration route for PlayStation, and that there will be a PS5?
Fine, I guess. I mean, I hope they keep the backwards compatible, the continuity of software.
Right.
Because of the architecture, I see no reason why they couldn't. Basically, you could have called the Xbox One X the Xbox 4,
Or just
whatever.
called it the Xbox.
Yeah.
Because really, that's what we're getting to at this point.
I mean, basically, I think it's
Just one
it's
platform.
entirely up to the console manufacturers now when the next generation begins, because it's not. It sounds like we're going to get, incremental upgrades of the hardware regularly to the point that you're never going to really see that jump again.
Yeah.
So it's basically going to be up to the manufacturers themselves to decide when to slap that new number on.
I mean, these have become PCs.
Yeah.
I mean, basically what it is Sony PC,
Right.
a.k.a. PlayStation whatever, Microsoft PC, which is redundant, whatever. But they're just PCs now.
Yeah.
Like, they're a platform. So you have your real PC that you've been playing for 30 years or whatever, and now you have your Microsoft PC and your Sony PC, and there are exclusive games for each one of those. And that's good. That's a good thing. Like, closing off a platform is so 1990s. Like, there's no need to say, you can't play this old game on this new console anymore. There just isn't. And look, while I think it's absolutely what's going to happen. And while Sony may call it the PlayStation 5, it really doesn't matter.
No. So
There's no way Sony's going to cut off PS4 software from
No.
playing on the PlayStation 5.
It will still work, and
Right.
you'll still have PlayStation Now for stuff before that, and
Right.
they'll still do classics and stuff. I'm curious, like, what do you think, like, when Sony decides to put out something they call the PS5, what's going to justify the 5?
The hardware that's inside,
Yeah.
really. That's it. And it's going to be a pissing contest between Xbox One X and whatever.
Because, like, presumably, whatever the PlayStation 5 is going to have to be vastly improved over the Pro, but also, some kind of step or two beyond the Xbox One X.
Yep.
And then presumably the next Xbox will do the same. You'll just constantly be doing this leapfrog
Yeah, it's
thing.
just going to keep leaping over top of each other. But no matter what, you're going to be playing the same games you were playing on your prior consoles. So I love it. I think this is great. I think we finally hit the sweet spot for consoles. As long as they keep doing this, I'm going to be one happy camper. We're going to get more powerful hardware. You can buy it if you can afford it and you want to. If you don't, you're fine playing on the older hardware. I mean, I think the one thing is, at a certain point, you're not going to be able to play the PS5 games on your PS4.
Right.
That's sort of the where the line is drawn.
I mean, I would guess that is what the number is going to
That is
indicate.
what it'll mean.
Yeah.
That's when you won't be able to play like PS5 games on your
Right.
PS4. That's when they'll call it the PS5.
Yeah.
When they finally reach that point where they're like, okay, this game is not going to work on PS4, that's when it's called PS5. So I think we'll get there probably in 2 years.
That sounds about right.
That's what I'm guessing. Right now, they're in the harvest stage of that console. They're not going to kill it early. So let's see. Justin Horman, were there any games that you think were shown too much at E3? Like, while it was showing, you were like, okay, I got it, next. Crackdown 3.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I got that the first time I saw, like, the teaser trailer.
I mean, I could have done without the Porsche reveal.
Yeah.
But
Call of Duty
that's
World
not
War
really
II,
related.
that's another one. Like, they didn't show it that much.
No, I guess, like...
But if you're curating content for Sifted, there was a ton of
Right.
Call of Duty World War II content out there.
But it's
And
just, it's like, I don't, you don't have to watch it.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
it's like they showed a ton of Mario Odyssey, but like it just showed it in a venue where you were only going to see it if you were interested.
And they also showed different things each time. Actually, I think I figured out the game that fits this perfectly, and that is Assassin's Creed Origins.
Yeah, they didn't really have much to show beyond that trailer and that 30-minute gameplay demo.
That same area that they had. And so because they went to every stage and did a demo at every stage, that for Microsoft and Sony and then IGN and GameSpot and on and on and on, yeah, that game started to wear thin after a while. It's just because they only had so much of a demo to show, and when you show it like 8 or 9 times, you have really squeezed it dry of sort of everything you can see from it. So I think that's the one game I would say. Still like it, though. Still hyped for it. I'm excited for that game. Kills with Kindness. Do you think the Xbox is basically a version of Steam at this point? They are not making anything new and seem happy to provide a platform and profit from other devs' work.
Are they? No.
They are. I mean, Microsoft, we've said this before, when it releases its monthly sales figures or whatever, it says how many people were on Xbox Live. And because that's the steady money stream,
Right.
no matter what. Like, if you break down the annual cost of Xbox Live, whatever they're making per month off of Xbox Live, that is that steady money that's come in all the time. And I don't think it's by design, because if it were by design, it would be like Valve, and it wouldn't be making games at all or investing in games at all. I just think it's found itself in this position where it looks like it's trying to be Steam, but it's not. It just doesn't have the software to make it appear like it's not Steam. I just think it's just poor planning, investing in the wrong things, cutting the wrong things. One of my predictions before E3 was that Scalebound would be an Xbox One X game. That makes too much sense. And it didn't happen. And that seems to be a common theme with Microsoft anymore, is that things that seem to make the most sense aren't necessarily the decisions that it makes. So, I don't know.
Starting with their OS.
I agree that it looks like it's turning into Steam, but I think it was not by design at all. I think it's
I think that's just the best they can do right now.
Yeah, for sure. Here's a good one, The Legacy. What are your thoughts on Atari making another console?
Don't.
Why? Why?
Did we learn nothing from the Jaguar?
Well, they're not making a new console.
No, they're just redoing the 2600.
It's just a micro console.
It's like you can already get that. Like I saw one of those on the shelf at Target the other day.
There are Atari collections already.
Yeah.
You can buy them on eBay for $1.
Yeah. Also,
like literally $1. You
also
can buy like PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 Atari collection.
Yeah. Also, let's be honest. It's not a lot of games from them worth playing. I mean,
River Raid, Pitfall, Barnstormer.
I liked Atlantis Attacks.
I don't think I even played that one.
That was Activision. That was one of the first
Activision made the best games. For
Atlantis
Atari
Attacks? I think it was just called Atlantis. Actually, Atlantis Attacks was a Marvel crossover. It was like this. You had like a spaceship flying saucer thing. And you pushed which direction to shoot up, down, left.
Oh
and right.
yeah, I played that, and they just come from the sides.
Yeah.
I remember that. That was like the simplest game ever.
It was like a little asteroid just came.
No, and I remember the last one would come fast and then go real slow.
Yeah.
It'd go whoosh, and then you'd have like a minute for it to go that last I forgot what that game was called. What was it called again?
Atlantis.
Oh, that's
was it
right.
Atlantis? No, that was Cosmic Arc.
Cosmic Arc.
Atlantis was you had a little flying saucer over like a kind of a missile command instead. Yeah.
There was Yar's Revenge was pretty good.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I mean,
you should play. Everyone who's too young to remember should play Pac-Man on the 2600 just to understand
the disappointment.
To understand why, when I look at ports of things, I don't always just instantly hate them. This is like, to maybe understand why people like me and Shane, even the bad games today are kind of miracles.
Yeah, they are.
Golden Axe Beast Rider is terrible to go back to that, but if you showed that to like 1982 me, I'd be like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure. I think Atari's just it's looking at the NES Classic and saying, oh my god, like if we do...
Yeah, and making the error that they were as important as the NES Classic in terms of nostalgia. And it's like, look, I was the right age at that time, at the same age as some of these kids were for the NES.
With the NES, yeah.
And the NES is just a totally different beast.
Yeah.
It's
there's a reason why the Atari 2600 almost killed the gaming industry, and the NES saved the gaming industry.
Yeah, it's
plain as that. Don't care. Don't care. Yeah, that's. Oh man, those are the days. Let's see. That was actually asked a couple times.
They can stay the days.
The Impartialist. How long do you think the older companies in the industry can rely on nostalgia for a steady stream of money? Seems to me that we get older, I realize younger gamers have little interest in the classics we grew up with, and after our fourth or fifth or sixth time buying Mario Brothers 3, I think some older gamers are getting bored of playing old games too. Do you think Nintendo virtual console games will always sell? At what point does it stop being worth the effort for developers? Great question. Long, but great.
Yeah, I think, specifically the virtual console equipment, that will always be free money from a certain segment of the audience.
We also have to remember that there's always someone turning 8 years old. Mm-hmm. Us older folks, yes, we will stop. But I have already stopped rebuying those games, by the way. I do not. Like that, I think the Wii was the last time for me. That was the final...
I paid the $1 upgrade fee for a couple of my favorites on the Wii U, and that's about it. And I bought
some of these games like 5 times. I can't do it.
I think at this point I have every Zelda game pre-Wind Waker on my 3DS in some form or another. So why do I need anything else again? It's like
I'm done.
It's not worth it at this point.
Sure.
I have like the Link to the Past like 3 different ways right now. It's like I've got a virtual console copy, I got the Game Boy Advance one, I got the Super Nintendo version. Like, why do I need another one?
I'm done. I'm not buying any of those old Nintendo games again. And I think a lot of older folks are that way. So you're right, but there's always these younger kids that are coming into the industry every day. Someone like
I think
said,
there's also like the
say,
hardcore audience that every time they buy a new Nintendo system, they'll just rebuy the Virtual Console library because that's what they do.
because they're marks.
And yeah.
I mean, really, that's what it is.
It is, and it's always going to, in the end, I think, be profitable to make the tiny minimal effort it takes to move that to your new system and let it just.
Nintendo not stopping.
Move your 25-year-old game to your new system and charge $7.99 for it and watch the money roll in. Basically, I
just think the older folks are over it, or most of them anyway. But there's
also the nostalgia thing's just going to move. It's just going to move up. It's just the frame of reference is going to move. I mean, that's why Microsoft paid $4 billion for Minecraft, because in 20 years they're going to be rolling in money from all the 30-something kids born in 1997 that are want to relive their Minecraft days.
That, and again, new kids are born every day.
Yep, and they're going to want to introduce that to their kids, and
they're scaling.
And they're going to want to take their kids to the DreamWorks Minecraft movie, and they're going to. I mean, it's all going to keep happening.
And by then, Minecraft is just this gigantic thing. It already is. And as they scale it up with new hardware and add new features, and by then, how many expansion packs will there be for Minecraft in 20 years?
Countless.
It's mind-blowing.
There's a generation of children for whom the name Steve will make them think of Minecraft forever.
Yeah, you're right.
That's what Steve is going to mean to these people.
You're right.
And we sometimes, I think, as we're old enough that we lose sight of that, but there's a whole nother nostalgia game brewing that we're going to see in 15 and 20 years, and I got to give Microsoft credit for seeing that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the foresight to buy Minecraft was pretty brilliant. The Stand User, what's up? How do you feel about trailers that don't show gameplay?
Okay with it.
Yeah. As long as it's the first.
It's the first, yeah. If it's the announced trailer, yeah. Sure. You get the first trailer is here's what the game is conceptually, and the last trailer is get hyped, and I'm fine with that. But you got to show some gameplay for your second outing.
Oh yeah, second trailer has to have gameplay in it, but that's usually what they do.
Yeah, it's pretty.
I mean, unless you don't have the budget, and then the first one shows gameplay.
Right. Or if you're Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, in which case you probably shouldn't show gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we're okay as long as it bookends the marketing cycle. Anywhere in between, it starts to get a little funky. Maybe you throw a live action thing in the middle there.
I don't like the teaser. I don't like the Metroid Prime 4 thing.
I think
that's
just a logo.
You gotta have something to show me. Something. Even if you just showed.
They do call them teaser trailers.
Yeah, but even if you just showed Samus turning to the camera in the suit, that, I'm fine with that. But you got to show me something more than the logo design.
Here's a good one. X-Lord Xerxes. What are your thoughts on Sony not allowing crossplay? Seeing as Nintendo and Microsoft are doing it.
Well, I believe
this is for Rocket League.
Yeah, an earlier question I think asked if we thought if Sony not allowing crossplay was a dick move, and I think that's a good way to put it.
Yes,
I understand kind of why they're in the lead and they don't have to play nice, but it's a dick move.
But it's kind of funny how Sony gets back in the saddle and suddenly
all of a sudden they're back to where
they're back to being their jerky selves.
Yeah, it's so. I don't think it gains them anything.
I mean, one thing I would say is you look at the big three platform holders. Sony has always been the most arrogant. Yeah, always. It's.
Well, also the fact that Nintendo's letting them do it and Sony isn't
is insane.
Look,
because Nintendo's
super restrictive about all. Oh yeah,
we're not going to give you the programming hooks to get in there. They're so paranoid. I mean, they won't even do voice chat. They're so paranoid.
But we'll put up Rocket League, and they're just yeah, sure, that makes sense. It's look, if Nintendo's doing it, Sony's got no excuse. There's no excuse.
I'm shocked by this, to be honest with you. And we've talked. I think we talked about this after maybe our Best of E3 awards. Mm-hmm. Somebody asked this question before, but. And we brought up the fact that, Sony's in the lead. It doesn't have to do this, but it just is such a bad look.
Yeah.
It just makes you look like this pompous jerk. And it had built up so much goodwill with players in the first couple years of the PlayStation 4's life.
Really?
But it also makes you realize, maybe some people don't know this. We do, because we're jaded and we've been doing this for a long time. But a lot of people have this way of romanticizing these platform holders and oh, I love Sony and Sony loves me. No, they don't. They really just love your money. And they'll say whatever, and like a lot of companies, they'll say whatever they need to say to get you to buy it. A lot of people, when they decided to buy a PS4 instead of an Xbox, were like, oh, because Microsoft's being anti-consumer, and Sony's for the gamer. No, they're all anti-consumer.
Well, and also, Yeah, like we said, Nintendo is not your friend.
Right.
Sony is even less your friend.
Really, no, you're absolutely right.
Like, Reggie would probably help you if he found you on the road. Like, I don't know if Sony would.
Yeah, so it sucks. I think it's really lame what Sony is doing, but at the same time, it does not surprise me all that much. Here's one from Hippie2000. Here's more of a outside gaming question. Do you guys have any pets?
I have one cat.
I have none.
I used to have two until this year.
Yeah.
But no, we got one.
Yeah, he just recently had a cat pass away. My cat died years ago, and I've never got another one. I was devastated by the cat dying.
Yeah.
And I hated myself. I'm like, why am I so bad out of shape over my cat dying? It's so weird.
I will probably get another cat later, but
Yeah.
like, we're probably going to move soon,
Yeah.
and I don't want to get another... Like, I want to get a kitten and, like, then uproot it and put it somewhere else. I'll wait. But I do miss having my own cat.
I got used to not having a cat. Once I did, I didn't want another one. Because then when I leave, I don't have to worry about someone babysitting the cat or changing the litter box. And
Yeah, I just like animals too much.
I do too. But I think the other part too is I'm avoiding being devastated again by the cat dying.
That's valid. I mean, for
That's
sure.
just a subconscious thing where I'm like, I don't want to go through that again. So yeah, no pets for me. Erebus Jones, the disappointment in the lack of first-party support for Xbox One X is reasonable, but is it possible that being the best platform for multi-format will be enough for some success, especially as 4K takes off? Good question. We always get great questions, by the way. You guys are awesome.
My guess would be no. Mainly
not
because,
enough.
Well, maybe because the most powerful console almost never wins.
Yeah.
It's not about the power. It's about the price and the games and the experience. And mostly, early on, mostly the price.
Yeah.
And I think the price is high and the games aren't there and the experience is better but not great. And in the end, I think they're gonna bleed people to Sony because Sony is just like, while they are not perfect, they are the lower priced, has everything you want to play except maybe Crackdown and who cares, option for everything else that you would want third party wise, or for $100 less you get a Switch and play two of the best games of the year.
Right.
So.
Multi-platform's not enough.
Yeah,
even if it's the best-looking version of this multi-platform game.
And on top of that, it would take a while for word of mouth to kind of spread on the idea that the Xbox One X is that superior experience, and that's not going to get them the sales for the holiday season they need to come out on top, or even that number two. I think they're going to struggle for number two at this point because I think Nintendo's going to blow the doors off the Xbox One X.
Mitchell is alive, formerly Snowpiercer. Ran into him at E3 and had a conversation with him and one of his friends for a good while. It was great to meet up with a sifter in the real world. His question is, will the imminent release of Crash and Sane Trilogy, do you foresee it to be successful enough to warrant the return of the Bandicoot, maybe even Spyro, starring in his own non-Skylanders game?
God, I hope not. I don't know. I'm actually interested to see what the sales on the Insane trilogy are going to be because I don't know anyone who likes Crash.
I don't really either.
But I see a lot of hype for it.
There are fans.
I see a lot of hype for it on Twitter and on Gaff. So clearly there's a certain demographic that grew up at the right time that loves those games. So maybe, it's a big gulf between remake, because these are remakes, they're not remasters,
Yeah.
these are full remakes.
Yeah.
There's a big gulf between remake of classic games sold well enough to justify remake and sold well enough to start development on a brand new project.
Yeah. I think it's going to do the exact opposite.
I think you might get a remaster of the next 3 Crash games. Whatever those were.
I think it's going to do the exact.
Were there more? Were there more?
I don't even know.
There were more games. They weren't all Sony exclusives, but after the first 3, they went multi-platform, and there was stuff on the GameCube.
Like Universal,
or something.
yeah. They were more like traditional 3D games, though. They weren't like run at the camera.
But they passed. Various companies have passed Crash Bandicoot around like a joint.
Yeah.
It's not.
I think the opposite is going to happen. I think what you're going to see is that people are going to buy and play this, and they're going to hate it. And they'll never make another Crash Bandicoot.
I would like that to be true. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I feel like people love these games inexplicably for no good reason. But if you liked it when you were a kid, you're gonna like it it's gonna be a nice trip down memory lane in a better package. So I feel like, but my question is always for this: are there really that many Crash fans out there? I mean, that care now?
I mean, there were. I mean, look at the press conference where they announced it, and people went wild.
Yeah.
But there's lots of people that are excited.
People went wild for Shenmue 3 too, but it's like, how many Shenmue fans are there? I mean, there's nobody. There's enough to get a Kickstarter off the ground, but like, I don't know if that game's going to sell anything. I bet Crash Remaster sells more than the Shenmue 3.
Yeah. Man, I don't. Well, it'll be close.
I think Crash will sell more.
I think it'll be close.
I'd say we should wager on it, but I don't know if we'll still be alive when that happens.
Sub-level 28, is there any point in even getting a 4K console if you have a 1080p TV?
Yeah, I mean...
Did you not watch Microsoft's presentation?
They
spent a whole 10 minutes.
You about the thing.
They told seriously, for 10 minutes, they focused on 1080p TV owners and why they should get Xbox One X.
I mean, I have a 1080p TV. I don't have a whole lot of plans to get a 4K TV anytime soon because movie content doesn't really... The Ultra HD stuff is mainly a scam.
Right.
And even with the Xbox, eventually, presumably in years from now, they'll start doing. Maybe again, even the Star Wars movies are only mastered in 2K at this point. Mm-hmm. But video games are one of the few places where 4K is truly 4K if you're doing it at full 4K. These systems are not. Even the Xbox One X is not really. It's still using checkerboard in places according to Digital Foundry. However, when you go up to that kind of dynamic 4K thing. When you downsample that to a 1080p signal, it looks amazing.
It really does, yeah. It makes a difference.
I would say you almost get a better experience downsampling to 1080p than you do trying to run it at 4K, because 4K is going to have
it'll depend on the
shakiness
game, obviously.
there, depending on the game. But like in general, I have Horizons running on my Pro, and it looks great on 1080p. It doesn't have HDR because it's a plasma, an old plasma. But I think if you have the money and the budget to do it and you care about that kind of image quality, I think you will notice a difference for sure.
Yeah. To answer your question, yes, it's worth it. I mean, it is worth it to get a 4K console if you only have a 1080p TV. You'll definitely see the difference. All right, let's answer one more here before we call it a day. Do you have one queued up by any chance? I'll take that as a no.
It turned into
lots of people
TV talk.
It also turned into lots of people who have had pets pass away, and our condolences to all you guys. We know it's tough, and so it was surprising to me how devastated I was when my cat died. I think the thing about pets is that they never do anything mean to you.
Right.
I mean, unless they're playing and scratch you or whatever, but like humans intentionally do mean stuff to other people. Pets is just like, bro, feed me. And give me a place to use the bathroom, and I'm like 100% loyal. And I think that is why it's so hard sometimes for pets, because they're just like your best friends, and they have when you talk about like love that really has no boundaries or conditions, unconditional love, like pets give you that more than a human ever will. So
it's also hard. I think it's hard to commiserate about that in a sense, because like if a person dies, you have maybe a funeral, everybody knew them, you talk about stuff. But usually your pet is like special to you, and everyone else just sort of knows it exists.
Yep.
And that makes it hard. You're kind of the custodian of all that, and that's kind of an emotional burden to have.
It is, yes. And you also feel
You're
silly.
the only one who really knows how awesome your dog was.
You're right, yeah. And it's also weird because it's like you want to talk to someone about it, but you know they don't care. Mm-hmm. So it's like you don't get that comfort from other people either when your pet dies that you do when a person passes. So. There was one here and I scrolled past it. Oh, what is your favorite E3 moment of all time?
Of all time? I think that is probably the Twilight Princess trailer, when everybody went completely nuts. Nintendo's press conference 2004.
Yeah.
In terms of like presenting of content, the 2004 press conference where everybody went crazy. I was there. I was standing room only. I was standing in the middle aisle, and I still remember that room.
Yeah. It was like so ghetto the setup too.
Yeah.
It was like They had
wires
this cheap
everywhere,
stage,
like-
wires everywhere. These two almost like just projector screens on the side.
Yeah, it was
like,
that were like 60 inches. Like I was like, I don't know, I can't see what.
yeah, the room was like just this flat room. Like the
Yeah.
stage was hardly elevated. It was just
It was
kind of ghetto.
It was a transitional
I hate to
period.
use that phrase.
It was a transitional period.
Yeah.
3 years earlier, they were in a 100-seat hotel like meeting room under a basement. So
Right,
it was like
yeah.
it advanced.
Yep.
But I remember like Reggie did the one more thing, and then the thing came up, and I turned to my friend who was with me, and I said, "Holy shit, they did it!"
Yeah.
And then the he rides because I knew what it was as soon as I saw it, and the horse rode out, and everybody went crazy. There was a guy like 4 seats over crying on the floor. I mean, it was madness.
Well, that's where that
Madness.
meme comes from. That shows like all the IGN 64 guys,
Yes,
like
like
this,
that.
like
Yeah.
you've seen it all over the internet.
So
that was
content-
from that moment.
Content-wise, it's that. Personally, it is 2005 when we went live. We did live coverage for the first time.
Yep.
After years and years
Of
of
asking and
wishing
begging,
and asking
yeah.
and wanting and saying, please, we need to do this. And we finally did it. And we kind of invented how you cover E3 now.
Live,
Like
yeah.
the demos on stage and coming to the... When we first said that, I remember the PR people, you want us to take the game to you? Like,
And
you want
play it?
Play it in front of people?
Yeah.
It was like we were asking them to like strip and like roll in spiders.
And a lot of them
It was-
wouldn't.
No, some of them wouldn't. And then like I think Capcom came out. Like some,
Yep.
they were like, and Microsoft did, and like there was like some brave souls came out and like
And now
plowed
that-
the road.
and now that's just how
and
it
the
is.
next year, everybody lined up for it, and
Yeah.
now it's just how you do it.
Yeah.
And it was, and like I remember wrapping those 3 or 4 days that we did. And like I have never felt like that's like top 3 professional gratification moments. I just
Yeah.
felt like we'd done something
We were trailblazers.
really good
Yeah.
that lived up to how good we were at what we did.
Well, it came out great.
Yeah.
And the ratings were great, which
Yep.
was something that was a big deal back then.
People actually watched. We weren't sure that was
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah. It was,
And I felt good because it was, because that was before streaming and before even really YouTube was functional.
Yeah.
And it was a time, I felt like we'd brought what E3 was home to people that couldn't go for the first time in a really tangible way, and that felt really good. So those are my 2 best E3 moments, as a gamer and as a producer.
Yeah, my favorite E3 moment, probably the first time I went to E3. I mean, you just can't replicate the feeling of walking in the door for the first time. And it was in Atlanta. And I hadn't really traveled a lot of places at that point in my life, so I was like kind of nervous. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to Atlanta, and like I'm going by myself, and walking through the doors for the first time, drenched in sweat because it was like 100 and some degrees there, and then just getting freeze dried by the air conditioning, and then looking up and just seeing the games, and then all the people that I met, like because there was other people back then. E3 was like it had been. I think I missed like the first year or maybe 2. I didn't go to it when it was a part of CES. And then when it moved
so it
out
started in, the first E3 was 95.
Yeah, and I went to Atlanta in 98, so I missed a couple there before I finally went. And
I ran into a guy a while ago who was in the room when the E3 95 Sega and Sony press conference, because that was back when all the press announcements were in the same room, one after the other. And Sega got up and like showed the Saturn and said, "Surprise! It's out right now in stores." I was like, "What? It's like $500. I think it's $499." And the Sony guy just gets up and goes, $399. That was it, and that was the end of it. That was, and instantly you saw everything had changed.
yeah,
The entire industry had changed.
yep. And so that's my favorite moment. Just the first time I ever walked onto an E3 show floor, and this was after it had splintered off from CES and was its own thing. So that's like my favorite memory of my favorite working memory. Obviously, the first time we did E3 live. I mean, that's really hard to beat. But I think when I left G4 and went to GT, and it was just me, and then I had to hire this whole staff of people to cover games, not just generally, but to also handle E3. And then we had to bring more people in for E3. I think that first E3 at GT, where our site just literally just exploded. Like, just the traffic that we did. And, I was a new hire at that point, and my boss, like, was freaking out. He was just like, oh, my God, I can't believe what you've done in, like, a couple, because I started in March. And so I had March, April, May, 3 months to get everything, to hire all these people and to set up all the processes and to brief all our video editors on how it was going to work and to convince people that they were going to work all night, and that's just the way it was. Like, to us, that's the way it was. But you go to a new company, And they're just like, what? You're expecting me to work like 12-hour shifts, and when I leave, someone else is coming in working it? No. And I'm like, yes, this is how it's going to go, and it's going to be huge, and it's going to be a major success. And it all happened and worked. And I remember my boss was just beside himself. Like the second day when the traffic was just crushing, and I just always remember his face. He was just filled with glee, and he gave me a high five so hard that it like hurt for like a day. Like, I could feel it in my hand for like a day. And so for me personally, like having to kind of strike out from you guys and take what we had all learned together at G4 and then try to replicate it somewhere else with people who had never done it and were reluctant to do it, and then having the big payoff of like by the second day, like I remember Sega called and we had shot a walkthrough for I think Sonic 2006 off screen. And I remember my boss was somehow Sega had called Viacom's sales team and said, hey, if you don't pull that down, like we're gonna like stop, we're not gonna run our ads with you on MTV or whatever. And my boss was over the moon over that, because it was just like this new acquisition, and to know that we had made such a stir that Sega cared so much that we were running this stuff that they would call Viacom corporate and be like, hey, we have this contract with you guys and this website is running our stuff. Like, he did not care, because he cared. He's like, oh, Sega. And I was like, oh, no, I'm so sorry. He's like, oh, I don't give a crap. Like, that's freaking awesome. Like, so
He's ahead of his time.
Yeah, so that E3, 2006 E3, I think is probably the best moment of my professional career. So other than my time working at G4 was the best time of my career in general, though. And a lot of the people I was friends with, I'm still friends with from G4.
Yeah,
whereas honestly, a lot of the people
period.
from GT, I don't talk to that much.
Yeah, but it's like, we forged the new trail, and some of that stuff, especially the E3 early live production, and even the fast turnaround stuff from 2003 and 2004, we really it's probably the closest we'll ever get to going through combat.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's like,
I don't like to make those analogies,
No, but like,
I have family members in the military.
but
so
like
I try to
there
stay
was
away
like,
from it,
but it's that same kind of like.
I get what you're saying.
It's that same kind of bond where like
Yeah.
you've been through something you can't explain to somebody else.
they'll never get it.
There.
Yeah, they never get it.
So I think, and I think it's maybe
been a
different.
good life.
It's maybe It's also maybe different in the sense that like you say, you built GT out of your know-how, whereas we all figured that all out together at G4, and it takes.
That's really what GT was. It was just an extension of what I had learned with all you guys. Of us all trying things and failing, figuring out what actually works, and I just took it and just replicated it with a different.
And that
group of
happened
people.
a lot with people that were there in that, and then they take it elsewhere and bring it.
Yeah.
I think you were the most successful at doing that by far, but like a lot of the stuff you see now and how coverage is done comes from people who were there and
No, you're right.
went out and brought it elsewhere.
Just like you see NFL.
Brought the fire ahead.
No, it's true. It's kind of like NFL coaching trees that you see. Where you're like, oh, there was this old coach, and then he had all these assistant coaches, and it just filters on down to where you have like this group of people who are all kind of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So.
And I will say that even though the crowding was annoying this year, one of the nice things was to see, like on Tuesday, it was to see so many people having that walk into E3 for the first time moment, and like just everybody looking around at all. It's that moment.
It's like they've seen it on television.
Yeah, but you never. And then like for me, I mean, I think 99. Yeah, 99 was my first one. Like I'd never seen. Yeah, I'd seen photos, but I'd never seen video of it. And I walk in, and it's just like you don't know. It's like you walk into this thing. You have no idea. I've never been to LA Convention Center before at that point.
Yeah.
It's gigantic. I've never seen this much gaming stuff in one place ever in my life. And it's like, wow, everywhere I look, there's something I care about. It's a new experience.
It's great. Okay, before we go, we have one thing to take care of. We have people who donated to Sifted during E3. And look, a lot of these people were already elite, people who had already kind of donated over the threshold to get their green avatar and their green backgrounds on their comments. But during E3, we really appreciate the people who donate money, because we are busting our butts. And some of these people who donated actually sent me private messages saying, hey, this is just because of what you guys are doing at E3. We know you're working really hard. So some of the people that we're going to show right now are already Sifted elite, but they did donate more money during E3, and I want to make sure that I thank them. So we got sub-level 28, The Surly Mexican, Casuality, Fish, O-Taps, who's on the chat. Thank you, brother. Fun Boy, and Brave India. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it very much. I'll never stop appreciating all the things the subscribers do for us and all the donations that you guys have given us. You guys are the best. So that's it. I think we finally put the last cap on E3. I don't think we'll talk about it again for next week's show. In fact, we'll have a guest host next week. Matt will be out for the next 2 weeks. Matt will be out. So we'll have guest hosts for the next 2 weeks on GameFace. Should be the same day and time, provided they can get here. That actually, now that I think about it, might be an issue. GameFace might not be at 1 o'clock on Friday next week. Depends on who our special guest, if he can make it here with his work responsibilities and other stuff. So, Matt, have a good vacation. You're heading up north to be with the family for a little bit.
Yep. First time in a long time.
I can't remember the last time I took a vacation, but it's going to happen soon, I think. I keep saying that. But so we will have a guest host the next couple weeks. Stay tuned on the site and on our Twitter feed to find out when the next episode will be. But yeah, I think this is the last time we're going to talk about E3. I think we've milked that sucker for all it's worth. Another great E3.
Yeah. Unless you want to talk about it with your guests who have a different perspective.
Yeah, that might be possible. It all depends on the topics, man. We had to work to get the show together today, so we'll see what happens. But much love to all you guys. Thanks for all your support during E3. Thanks for all the great questions on the chat. Seems like we had a lot of people in chat today, which is excellent. We really appreciate your support. Everyone have a great weekend. GameFace is up and out.